For a year, the Nuong family called me the beggar and meant it. When I could not open my second martial vein in time, they struck my name off the rolls and gave me half a month to rise or be crippled and thrown back to the gutter. Then my grandfather handed me the torn half of a book worn in blood, and the mountains and rivers' martial soul woke inside me. It named a starving beggar called Nuong So its dominator, and let me remake every art I touched, so a basic fist shattered the clan genius barehanded. The boy they starved had come back to make them kneel. If you're enjoying this so far, drop a like and hit subscribe. It honestly keeps these videos going. To get here, I had to start as nothing. Let me show you that morning. The horizon had only just begun to pale to the gray white of a fish's belly, and already I was drenched in sweat on the empty training ground. This was Cheonpung City, the main residence of the Nuong family, and at this hour the courtyard rooster had not even crowed, let alone stirred another soul awake. In all that wide silent yard there was only me, throwing form after form into the cold dark, my breath tearing out of me in sharp bursts. I looked 13, maybe 14, a little tall for it and too thin, my skin an unhealthy, sallow yellow from a lifetime of never eating my fill. Not handsome, I knew that much, but I carried the bearing a martial artist ought to have, and I clung to that. Grandfather always said, a slow bird has to leave the nest early, that if I was worse than others, I should simply put in 10 times, 100 times the effort. I did not believe I would fail to break through to the martial vein second level. The people who laughed at me today, I told myself, would gape at me tomorrow. My name is Nuong So, and by blood I have no connection to the Nuong family at all. About a year ago, wanting to swell the strength of the clan, the Cheonpung City Nuong family had sent invitations out far and wide. Anyone carrying the Nuong surname could take the family's assessment. Those who tested well would be taken in as true disciples. Against all reason, a beggar boy who had grown up starving at his grandfather's side was one of the ones who passed. Even at that age, living off what people would drop in a bowl, I had opened my martial vein and reached the first level. It was all off a tattered cultivation technique I once picked up out of the dirt, by the family's measure that made me a genius. The elders running the assessment praised me to the skies for it. I let them. But I knew perfectly well in my own heart that all of it traced back to a single thing my grandfather had told me. In this world, martial artists reign supreme, and if I became one, the two of us would never have to beg again. From that day, I cultivated day and night. Even between rounds of begging, I never once stopped. And that was the whole secret of my so-called talent. The others thought I was gifted. The truth was only that I cultivated more desperately than anyone alive. Once I became a disciple, Grandfather and I were given a house of our own by the family, and for a while I was so full of hope for the future that it nearly hurt. There was a girl too named Naeun Woo. She was no blood of the Cheonpung City family either, but her people were well off. In the days when I still went door to door for food, she used to be the cruelest of the lot. She would wait until her family had gone back inside, then sneak out to throw my rice bowl to the ground and grind it under her little leather boots of advanced material. She liked to tell me she would sooner feed it to a dog than feed me. Then I entered the Nuong family, and all at once she looked at me with new eyes, even came out of her way to befriend me, and I was fool enough to feel proud of it. It filled me with the determination to go further in martial arts, to make a name for myself in the clan. Ideals, though, are full, and reality is cruel. A single martial vein, first-level martial artist, inside the vast Nuong family, is one drop swallowed by the sea. The Cheonpung City Nuong family had numbered over 10,000 before the expansion, and after it the count swelled toward 20 or 30,000. They stood as the plain and absolute overlord of the whole city. How could a family like that spare a second glance for a boy at the first level, when any random maid or manservant they owned had already reached the same rank? The boys and girls of my own age all had solid foundations, all standing at the second level or higher, some at the third. The fourth level was a height I could only crane my neck to imagine. If I could have broken through to the second level within the year, I might at least have held my head up. But some things cannot be forced. That tattered technique I had first cultivated clashed with the Nuong family's own basic cultivation technique, and I had been made to start over from nothing. So one by one, the people who entered with me left me behind. And Naeun Woo, who had warmed to me for a while, went right back to being the high and spoiled young miss the moment I stalled. She had not only reached the second level but hooked herself to a genius disciple of the clan besides. I did not let it crush me, just the opposite. I had not forgotten how I came to be here, so I cultivated harder and more stubbornly than before, swearing that I would not be driven out. If I were, my grandfather, the one man I leaned on to live, would suffer for it all over again. The family's rule was plain, that any outer sect disciple who could not break through to the martial vein second level within a single year would be removed. Otherwise, he was turned into a servant of the clan. As I stood sweating in the dawn, I had 1 month left on my year. What I was drilling was savage bull strength, the Nuong family's most common basic skill, an art that was at once a cultivation technique and a fighting technique. It could raise a man's realm and serve him in a brawl both, which is exactly why the lowest martial artists love it. From so many thousands of repetitions, I had a natural, seamless feel for it, which showed I was suited to martial arts, even if no one else thought so. Ordinary as the skill was, it still carried a rank, since every martial art is graded basic, then elementary, intermediate, advanced, and top tier. The higher the rank, the finer the cultivation and the fiercer the technique. Savage bull strength was merely the most ordinary basic art there was, and I, an outsider disciple without a drop of Nuang blood, was not even permitted to touch an elementary manual. I felt a breakthrough hovering just past my fingertips, always sticking at the same last crucial point. After a long stretch of drilling, I took a pull from my water bag and let myself think, bitterly, that if only I had a single breakthrough pill, the wall would fall. Nearly a year of watching had taught me that I was no worse than anyone here, that by rights, diligent as I was, my progress ought to have been faster. The whole difference lay in techniques and in pills. The true clansmen and the wealthier outsiders either held higher cultivation techniques or had the coin to buy a breakthrough pill to ease the passage. The disciples who had reached the second level had almost all used one. The pill was not even so dear and carried no side effects, but I simply could not afford it. The family feeding and housing me was already their greatest kindness, and they would never hand me money on top of it. The sun had fully risen, an hour gone, and I had just packed up to leave, wanting no trouble, when the trouble came anyway. A voice shouted across the yard for me to get lost, that this was his own private training ground, and trash like me had no right to cultivate on it. It was Nung Chung, a disciple of the clan, and he sprang up onto the high platform and shoved me. All my desperate drilling had at least left my body sturdy, so for all his effort I did not move, standing there like an old rooted tree. My thin frame held more strength than my sallow face suggested. I asked him plainly why he always came for me when I had never wronged him. He sneered that he took no joy in bullying a piece of garbage, only that my ears did not work. He had warned me off practicing here, he said, so my trashy chi would not infect the rest of them. That was a lie wearing an insult's clothes, and I knew it. He did it on purpose, and why not? Since of all the outsiders the expansion had swept in, only I dared refuse to bow. A bully needs someone who refuses, or there is no sport in it. The clan disciples carried an inborn arrogance, treating every outsider as a servant wearing a disciple's title, to be ordered about at will. Nearly all of us had been bullied at one time or another. Some chose silence, and some chose to beg for mercy. I had chosen to be neither servile nor cowed, because if I did not train on this ground I would have to walk far to find another, and I could not leave my grandfather alone that long. His friends, clan disciples, and the turncoat outsiders who trailed them like dogs egged him on. They laughed that he was useless, that he could not even push one first-level beggar off a platform, that a second-level man should have more strength than that. Stung, Nung Chung cursed that I dared look down on him, and swore he would slap me down and teach me what a martial artist was. He struck out with sudden disdain, his palm landing square on my chest. Blood spilled from the corner of my mouth, but I did not fall, and I did not let the force throw me clear either, though I could have. Once a man learns to flinch, the flinch becomes his habit, and I was unwilling. He kicked at me in a fury, and I spat out a mouthful of blood, and the sight of it startled him so badly that he flinched from his own strike. He lost his footing and pitched straight off the platform. Looking down at him sprawled on the ground, I felt a smile cross my face, and then the world tilted. My knees gave out, and I fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I was looking up into my grandfather's face, white-haired and thin, withered like old dried wood. He sighed and asked why I had to be so stubborn, saying it would have been fine to simply yield. And he pressed a bowl of bitter-smelling herbal soup into my hands and told me to drink. I could hear both the worry and the helplessness under his words. I chuckled that it was fine, that it was hardly the first time, that I would not yield anyway. Once I broke through to the second martial vein, I said I would go and settle accounts with Nuang Chung. He only called me a silly boy and sighed again. Though I was a child he had picked up off the street, he had always treated me as his own flesh, and seeing me hurt made his heart ache. I drank the cooled soup down in one swallow and felt a smile return to my face, because the truth was my refusal to yield was not only stubbornness. Ever since I began cultivating that tattered, incomplete manual, my body had mended at an unnatural speed. I had been knocked senseless more than once, just like today, and each time I woke inside half an hour, mostly whole, needing only a little soup to finish the healing. Then grandfather went quiet in a way I did not like, hesitating, and I told him to simply say what weighed on him, that there was nothing at this point I could not face. He looked at me a long moment, sighed one more time, and admitted that the family had sent someone while I slept. They wanted me to prepare the paperwork to leave the Nuang family. I sat up stunned and asked why, because only inside the family could I hope to learn better arts and make something of myself. Out on my own, I had no idea when my fate would ever turn. He said there was half a month left until the year-end competition. For this year's contest, any outer sect disciple who had not reached the martial vein second level would be barred from competing and swept out of the clan. He had heard that rival houses had seized some of the Neong family's resources so they could no longer feed so many mouths and meant to thin the disciples out. The old rules had grown much harsher. Half a month, I thought, reeling, because with a full month I would have staked everything on a breakthrough. But half a month was a knife pressed to the throat. The blow was not finished either, because grandfather had not said everything. He told me that even if I clawed my way to the second level within the 2 weeks, I would only hold my place as an outer sect disciple a while longer. Any such disciple who failed to reach the third martial vein before the age of 14 must become a family servant, and any who refused would have his cultivation crippled and be cast out. I understood the arithmetic at once. I was 13, turning 14 after the new year, and no honest road took a boy from the first level to the third in so short a span. If I became a servant, grandfather would lose his right to live inside the family walls, and where would he lay his head then? This was no longer a matter of face. It was a matter of life and death. And there was the shame besides, because when the family first chose me, my brothers from the beggar gang had all been sick with envy. If I crawled back to them like this, I would have no face left to show. Grandfather managed a sudden smile and told me to let it go, that if things truly did not work out, an old man could simply return to begging. My future should not be delayed for his sake, he said. I shook my head and said no, that even if only a shred of a chance remained, I would not give up. I would work harder than ever and reach the third martial vein before I turned 14, and I would make sure he lived well. I gritted my teeth, clenched my fists, and swore inwardly to give it everything. He told me I already pushed myself hard enough, that if I pushed any harder, I might break my body before I ever broke my realm. We still had to face reality, he said, that a second-level breakthrough in half a month was all but impossible, and I should start making other plans. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over my head, because it was true. I had not managed it in a whole year, so why would it come in half a month? My heart kept sinking, my oldest fear rising up, that no matter how hard I worked, it would all be for nothing. He tried to comfort me, saying that as long as the two of us were safe, that was enough, that he did not need me to become some great figure, only to be well. If I feared the beggar brothers laughing at me, he said, I should not, since they were all unfortunate men and would never laugh. They would be glad if I succeeded and would take me back if I failed, go back to being an ordinary beggar. I shook my head firmly and asked him whether he had forgotten how we were beaten on the streets in the old days, whether he had forgotten how Guja was kicked to death, whether he had forgotten the men who handed us food laced with rat poison, and how that one poisoning buried over 100 of our brothers at a stroke. We could not fight back, I reminded him, because that man kept martial artists at his side, and the few of us who went to confront him came home with our legs broken. I asked whether he wanted us to keep living a life beneath dogs and pigs, because I, Nyong So, refused to accept it, refused to believe I was lesser than anyone. Heaven always leaves a road open for the man who will not stop walking. In truth, I had no grand ambitions. I studied martial arts only to live like a human being and to avenge the brothers who had died. By the time I finished, grandfather's face was wet with tears, because he knew I was right, that if I could not become a martial artist, those same tragedies would simply keep on happening. He said he had not planned to give me the second half of the book, that he had feared I could not bear it, but that he could no longer afford to worry about that. This old beggar had been truly convinced by me, he said. From inside his shirt, he drew out a tattered book, the missing half of that same incomplete manual. He told me that when he found it, it was whole, but that there was a line written in it. And he turned to the page where the two halves joined and let me read it for myself. The line warned that without a resolve as firm as rock and a motive powerful enough to match it, a man must not, under any circumstances, cultivate what lay beyond that page. Death was certain otherwise. The words were written in blood. I told him not to worry, that I had the resolve and I had the reason, and that nothing would happen to me. Then I carried the second half to my room, fitted it against the first, and read the whole thing through from beginning to end. And as I did, a thread of golden light lifted off the pages and shot straight into my body. I flinched, but nothing seemed wrong, and just as I let my guard down, an image rose up in my mind. It was a painting. The scene of it was tangled and vast, a landscape of mountains and rivers and buildings that seemed to have no edge at all. It was half drowned in a drifting mist, so that most of it could not be seen. Only one corner showed clear, a small village with people and animals in it looking very peaceful. Then a whirlpool opened inside the painting, my sight went black, and I felt myself sucked in. When I could see again, I was standing in that very village, surrounded by strangers, and the strangers, on seeing me, all seemed deeply respectful, pressing their hands together to greet me. They even called me the Mountains and Rivers Master. I wondered whether this could be the village from the painting, and I remembered that the picture had held exactly such a village, the same in every line. The place was tranquil and free of conflict, comfortable to stand in, and yet I was anxious because what would I do if I were trapped here? Then a woman came toward me from the distance, treading on the empty air, ethereal and indistinct, like a fairy stepped down from a heavenly palace, so lovely it stopped my breath. She spoke of the primordial myriad races and of a mountains and rivers martial soul that ruled the myriad worlds, endless and enduring. She spoke of a primordial universe and its natural catastrophes, of a martial god who had slept and was awakening today, of a fated person who had at last arrived. Her voice was hollow and deep, as though it came from some other space entirely. I asked her, somewhat nervous, who she was. She told me I did not need to know who she was, nor where she came from, only that from this day I had awakened the mountains and rivers martial soul. I was the mountains and rivers master, she said, and the dominator of heaven and earth. Even as she spoke, she kept walking, and yet she never seemed to draw any nearer to me. Mountains and rivers martial soul, I thought. Mountains and rivers master, dominator of heaven and earth. I nearly laughed at myself, wondering what such power had to do with a martial vein first-level beggar. But I had heard of martial souls. Back in the primordial era, she told me, in order to resist the invasion of the myriad races, humankind had begun to cultivate martial arts. The greatest of them all was the mountains and rivers master, who had awakened this very martial soul, stood against the myriad races single-handed, and left deeds that would endure through every age. I had heard it said that in that ancient time all martial artists could cultivate martial souls, and that a great catastrophe between heaven and earth had since made them extinct. Now, she said, I was the second person ever to awaken the mountains and rivers martial soul, and perhaps the hope of humanity would have to be laid upon me. Perhaps I was the answer to whether people could once again become the spirit of all things and the king of the myriad races. Then her figure drifted further and further off and vanished at the very end of the world. I felt my body float up, my sight blurred, and when it cleared I was back in my own room, the tattered book gone without a trace. It left me all but certain that none of it had been a dream. Mountains and rivers martial soul, I thought. What exactly would it do? I could not find its function, and all the grand talk of masters and kings of the myriad races set far too distant. I only wanted to reach the second level, and then climb to the third. Since the book was gone and I could not cultivate it further, there was nothing to do but drill savage bull strength again, and the instant I began, I froze. Because as I moved through the form, a figure inside the painting in my mind was moving through it too, practicing the very same savage bull strength. The only difference was that the figure had brought it to true perfection. The simplest, crudest of basic arts, in that figure's hands, held not a single flaw. I stood stunned on the spot, then woke from it and hurried to mirror the figure, following its motions exactly, and the difference was night and day. Where my form had always lacked a certain flow, now the whole set poured out in one unbroken breath. And more than that, with every repetition I could feel the true chi in my body thicken by a measure, the second martial vein loosening under the pressure of it. It was working. The second vein was already giving way, and I was fully confident that by tomorrow at the latest, I would break through to the martial vein's second level. It was a miracle. Worried the sight would be too shocking, I gave up any thought of going outside and drilled in my room instead, again and again, until my motions overlapped the figures exactly. By then it was already the next morning, since I had been too excited to sleep the whole night through. Grandfather called from beyond the door for me to get up and eat, and I went out to find breakfast waiting. Because our standing in the family was so low, our rations were meager. The porridge was so thin there was scarcely a grain of rice to be found in it. The vegetables only wild greens or half-rotted leaves. Through grandfather's hands, even those turned out not half bad, and it was over that thin porridge that the painting showed me something new. Two images had formed inside it. The first laid my grandfather's body open and marked out every trouble in it with perfect accuracy, and among them was a rib, freshly broken. I asked him what was wrong with his ribs, because without the painting I would never have known, since he had hidden it so well. The reading told me plainly that the break was new, made by a palm strike. He waved it off and said it was nothing, baffled at how I could have found out when he had concealed it so carefully. I set down my chopsticks and stood, my voice gone cold, and asked who had done it. I could bear anyone bullying me, but not a hand laid on my grandfather, since without him there would be no knowing so at all. He hesitated and would not say. I told him that if he would not tell me, I would not eat again and I would starve myself to death, and I meant it. I knew he wanted to shield me, and I could not swallow the anger. He sighed and said the name at last, that it had been Yeong Chung, though he begged me to let it be. It was fine now, he said, that he had been beaten plenty of times begging in the old days and was used to it. I asked him whether a broken rib was called fine, and I dropped my chopsticks and ran for the door, leaving only one line behind me, that I was going to find Yeong Chung. I did not know why, but I now carried a complete strange certainty that if I faced Yeong Chung again I would win, and win handily. The function of the mountains and rivers martial soul was proving too powerful for words, since it seemed able to study and perfect anything in the world. The second image it had shown me over breakfast was grandfather at the stove, a scene of how to turn rotten vegetable leaves into a top-grade dish. but I had no attention to spare for cooking. What I wanted to know was whether the martial soul could also study an enemy's martial arts, because if it could, then I had truly leapt over the Dragon Gate. On the practice field, Noong Chung was flirting with a few female disciples, as if the lives of others meant nothing to him. This was the same man who had cracked my grandfather's ribs, and not even sent for a doctor to look at him. A strong, slow fire of hatred began to brew behind my eyes. He saw me coming, aggressive, and a sneer of disdain climbed between his brows. He asked whether the trash wanted to avenge his grandfather, and his question set the clan disciples around him laughing along, because to them I was badly overrating myself. I told him he had humiliated me again and again, and I had borne it because my skill was less than his, but that hurting my grandfather was the one thing I could not forgive. My heart was nervous, and yet full of a strong new confidence, because the mountains and rivers' martial soul had opened a door for me. This duel with Noong Chung was the best test of it. He laughed as if it were the greatest joke under heaven, and said that since he had broken the old beggar's ribs, he could break mine too. One of them urged him to finish me with a single palm, calling me as useless as the old beggar. He laughed that if he could not handle this kind of trash in one palm, he would have no face left to stay in the Neong family. Then he moved, and his whole being seemed to swell into a giant looming over me, his powerful aura pressing on my chest until I could scarcely breathe. So this was the strength of a second-level martial artist, I thought, only a single realm above the first, and yet the gap unexpectedly vast. The onlookers, seeing the shock in my eyes, all wore smiles of open schadenfreude. Sure, the battle had ended before it began. His palm looked ordinary, no larger than any man's hand, and yet in my eyes it transformed into a giant palm the size of a millstone. It was truly the palm of a giant that could crush me flat with a lazy wave. Some of the sharper disciples cried out that this was the giant spirit god palm, an advanced martial art, and they marveled that a mere second-level man had the right to learn it at all. One of them said his own strength equaled Neong Chung's, and yet he could only choose elementary arts. Another answered that there was no comparing themselves to him, since Neong Chung had a good father, the ninth master of the family, and a grandfather who had been the old family head. No wonder he had never been punished for breaking the old beggar's ribs. They agreed that once the advanced giant spirit god palm was out, I had not the slightest chance. The huge advantage of an advanced art pressed hard even on the men in the crowd whose cultivation stood above Neong Chung's. The reason arts are graded is that their power differs, and a second-level man wielding an advanced art might well defeat a third-level one. Noong Chung certainly thought highly of me, I thought, using an advanced art on a boy like this, and I felt a strange emotion. Without the mountains and rivers' martial soul, I would surely have had a few ribs broken today. A man like me, who did not even rate the right to learn an elementary art, and could only touch the basics, had lost at the starting line. Without the martial soul, I would have found it near impossible to ever stand out. And so, under the crushing weight of that advanced art, I smiled. Of course I smiled. Because a second Noong Chung had appeared inside the painting, and every weakness, every flaw he exposed in executing the giant spirit god palm was pointed out to me one by one. No one else on that field could see it. Knowing his flaws was not the same as landing a blow, of course. And to strike, I would have to seize the moment cleanly. But I had drilled hard for a year and been bullied by him often enough to hold a rich store of dueling sense. And the martial soul had already remade my body, so that my reactions and senses had sharpened many times over. That was my assurance of victory. Seeing me smile, Neong Chung felt a chill in his heart, as if his whole being had already been seen clean through. He snarled that I was playing tricks, and told me to witness his giant spirit god palm's destruction. The giant spirit god palm holds only 4 moves, and destruction is the fiercest of them, a move made to kill. Though his strength could not unleash its true power, he plainly thought it more than enough for a first-level boy. Destruction is an aura that shatters heaven and earth, and though he could not reach that, to the watchers his whole body seemed to raise a phantom condensed from true chi. It was a huge golden palm crashing down toward my head. They gasped at how fast, how ruthless it was, retreating before the terrible aura. Their understanding of advanced arts lifted another notch, and they were certain that with this move out I would not merely be beaten but killed. The family forbade its disciples to kill one another, injury being permitted but killing severely punished. Yet Noong Chung was the ninth master's son, and the old family head's grandson, and whom had he ever feared? At the very moment they all believed me dead, I moved. My body seemed to become a savage bull, and I drove straight into Neong Chung's chest, and he flew off like a kite with its string cut, never understanding what had struck him. I had hit the snake at its 7-inch mark. The art was only basic, but I had put it precisely through the gap in his guard, and his grand imposing palm became a joke. The crowd could not even see what had happened. My motion had been so fast. He hit the ground screaming about his ribs, and I told him what I had told him before, that those who hurt my grandfather are never forgiven. Since he had meant to beat me with one palm, I had beaten him with one move. Inside, I was shaking with nerves and disbelief. hardly daring to trust that it was real. But a boy raised among beggars keeps a steadier face than his pampered peers, and I knew exactly what had won it for me. The martial soul study and my own daily grind braided together. Yet one thing puzzled me, because at the instant of my strike my body had seemed to turn into a gust of wind, far faster than usual. I wondered whether that was another gift of the martial soul. The field was in an uproar. Disciples asking whether they had seen wrong, whether savage bull strength could truly be so fierce. The boy no one favored had crippled Naeum Chung in a single move, and Naeum Chung, caring more for his face than his ribs, lied the moment his mouth opened, claiming he had not used his full strength and that I had gone for his life. To my disgust, there were men ready to believe it, saying no wonder I had won, that Naeum Chung had held back, that I did not know what was good for me. In their eyes, he stood for all the main clan disciples, and to see him thrown down so ugly was a shared humiliation. Held back, I thought, when by the painting's reading his palm had been meant to kill me, and the talk of holding back was pure air. So I threw one line at his excuses, that losing and then inventing reasons was apparently the stuff the Nung family's own blood was made of. I turned and walked away while he ground his teeth behind me and swore that once he recovered he would never hold back again. Home again. I told grandfather I had beaten Young Chung, then shut myself in my room to keep cultivating, clear-eyed about how much luck had carried the day. First, the enemy had underrated me, and second, I had leaned on the martial soul, and neither of those was true strength of my own. The advanced artsmen like Nung Chung practiced sat just below the top tier of the secular world. Had he truly mastered his, then even with the painting laying his flaws bare, I might not have been able to seize them. To forge iron, a man must be iron himself. The martial soul's help was a fine thing, but raising my own power was the real work. If I could open the second vein, I might beat Nyong Chung again even without his contempt to lean on. But I could not do it yet, since opening each vein brings a great leap in strength and the gap between the first and second levels is wide. Here is how the ladder runs. The human body holds 9 martial veins, so the path is called the 9 levels of the martial vein, and every 3 levels form a stage. The first 3 make the awakening stage, the lowest rank of martial artist the secular world knows, called the martial student. Its finest can carry 1,000 pounds, tear tigers and leopards apart with bare hands, and punch down wolves and bears, formidable figures in ordinary eyes. For every vein opened in this stage, a man's raw strength climbs by 1 to 200 pounds, and the true chi in his body rises by 100 standard points. The standard point is simply the unit by which we measure a martial artist's true chi, so that most men just say how many points of chi they hold. In a fight between martial artists, it is usually strength and the amount of true chi that decide the winner. That means a first-level man stands 1 or 200 pounds and a full 100 points behind a second-level one, a grave disadvantage. It was exactly that gap I had leapt when I put Nguyen Chung on the ground, which was why the watchers reached so eagerly for absurd excuses to explain it. Past the 4th level, everything changes, because the 4th through 6th levels are the protective aura stage, whose men earn the title Martial Apprentice. Their true chi converts into a protective aura that can wound an enemy from a distance. To hold a protective aura is to be able to do a great many more things, and it is the goal countless martial artists chase, and most never reach in a whole life. Yet now I felt, strongly, that I might have a chance to become a martial apprentice, and the dream was no longer some vapor in the air, but a thing I could reach out and grasp. So I set to it. Savage bull strength has 9 forms in all, and I could match the painting figure on only the first 3, which was nowhere near enough. Once, twice, 100 times, endlessly mirroring the figure, and I found not only that my motions had gone smooth and fluid, but that every form now carried more force than before. And best of all, after more than 10 passes, the 4th, 5th, and 6th forms reached perfection. The surprises did not stop there. With every session I could feel a stream of energy flow out of the mountains and rivers martial soul into my Dantian and my martial veins. It was as if the painting could turn the natural energy of the world into true chi and simply hand it to me. If that were true, then whatever technique I cultivated hereafter might ripen far better than anyone else's, since I would be cultivating while the martial soul cultivated alongside me. And the gain would come fast. I noticed too that the painting kept changing. The mist that had shown only a corner of the village now peeled back to reveal a little more of the scene. A small increase, but a promise. Its full power had not yet been drawn out of it. On the day the clouds vanished entirely and the whole picture stood open, that would be the true awakening of the mountains and rivers' martial soul. Keep pushing, I told myself. Keep working, because for all that I understood so little of it, I knew at least that this thing meant me no harm. I drilled the last 3 forms with everything I had, resting only to eat, from morning until night. In the end, the 7th and 8th reached perfection, so that only the 9th stood between me and the second vein. But I was not a machine, only a 13-year-old boy, and at last, mid-drill, I lay down on the floor and fell asleep. The first thing I did on waking was to cultivate again, because the strong sense of crisis and pressure would not let me rest. I did not even have the right to use the family training ground. That ground was fought over not merely for face, since the family's old ancestor had laid its stones from special material, so that cultivating there cost less strength and yielded more. One day I promised myself I would cultivate there in the open, and move grandfather into a house that did not leak like the ruined temple I had once slept in as a beggar. That morning I poured myself into the 9th form, over 100 passes until a comfort and satisfaction I had never felt before spread through me. All 9 forms of savage bull strength stood perfect, matched to the painting figure exactly. My room was too narrow to test it, so I went out past the family gate to a small wood. With a loud shout I seemed to become a roaring bull and drove straight into a boulder before me, a stone of 200 or 300 pounds that before I could only mark, never break. This time the stone shattered with a roar. Second level of the martial vein, I thought, standing in the settling dust, finally broken through. I had expected perfecting savage bull strength would carry me across, but a prediction is one thing and the real, destructive power in my limbs was another, and I was thrilled beyond measure. The heavens truly never seal off every road. I had thought it would take a month at least, and instead, only 3 days after obtaining the mountains and rivers martial soul, I had already broken through. At this rate my future was without limit. The painting changed once more, its clouds parting a little further to reveal a household. And not a human one, but one of the primordial myriad races. It was the bull demon race, bull-headed and human-bodied, incredibly strong, holding terrifying power. I did not for a moment believe it a coincidence that a bull demon household appeared just as I brought savage bull strength to perfection. There was a connection there, though there was no use chasing it now, not with the family's grand competition bearing down. It was the one real chance an outer sect disciple ever got to seize what he could not otherwise touch. At the meal, I told grandfather of the breakthrough, and only after watching me demonstrate would he believe it. Then the tears streamed down his face, and he said that if he could see me come this far, he would die content. I told him not to speak of dying, that once the competition was done I would hire the best physician in the city to mend his ribs. It shamed me to the bone that I knew of the break and had no coin to treat it, leaving the old man in pain enough that he could not sleep. The only thing I could do was climb as fast and as high as my body would bear, since the competition's prizes were rich and freely chosen. Just endure a little longer, I thought. It will be here soon. He told me to be at ease, not to push myself too hard, that there were too many martial artists at my new level, and that overreaching would only get me hurt. His one wish was that I not be harmed for his sake, but my wish was just as simple, that to heal his injuries and to stand out I had to place well in the competition, and I would not be moved. There was time yet, so I went to the library pavilion to choose a higher cultivation technique better suited to me, since with a finer technique my progress would be faster still. I ignored the fingers that pointed at me the whole way, because improved strength was worth more than any man's opinion. The library pavilion, as its name says, is a place for storing books, and apart from some of the family's historical records it holds mostly martial arts classics. At the door, a crisp voice called me little beggar, and it was Naeun Wu, come out on the arm of a proud, handsome youth. In the days after I joined the clan she had fussed over me, and once I stalled she had turned vicious again and thrown herself into this youth's arms. I had no warm feeling left for her at all. So what if she was cute, when a heart more venomous than a scorpion made her only a gilded shell overwrought? The youth looked me over from on high, like a senior speaking down from a great height, and remarked that I was the little beggar Sister Wu had mentioned. I had actually broken through to the 2nd level, he said. Not bad, though among the outsiders I was still poor and had better keep working hard. He named himself, in the way such men do, Nyung Peng, a direct descendant of the family, cultivation at the peak of the 3rd level, a disciple of the elite hall. I looked at Nyung Peng, and once, before this person I had felt nothing but inferiority and helplessness. Now I did not care. It was only the 3rd level peak, and I would soon cross it. I told Nyung Wu she had certainly chosen a good man, but I told Nyung Peng that since this woman could discard me like a worn-out shoe back then, sooner or later she would do the same to him. We were the same age, 13, and I did not feel him my better. He snorted that a woman likes the strong and always has, since ancient times, and I asked, with a chuckle, whether he was truly so certain no one would ever catch up to him or pass him. He answered, proud as a cockerel that he was. I told him that in that case I would say no more, that he should carry on, since I still needed the library. Nyung Wu would not let me go without a sting, grinning that a person's fate is fixed by heaven, that I was born a beggar and would be a beggar my whole life. I told her I was a Noon family disciple now. She said it was useless, that sooner or later I would only be a beggar. If I could not place in the competition, I could not enter the elite hall, and if I could not enter the elite hall, I had to reach the 3rd level before 14. She asked whether I could do that, and if not, I could only go back to begging. There was another road, she added sweetly, to obediently become a servant of the clan, to attach myself to her brother Peng, who could shield me from Nguyen Chung's bullying. A disdainful sneer answered that for me, because even before the mountains and rivers marshal soul, I had never once thought of being any man's lackey, and I was no longer the person I had been. Noong Chung, Noong Pung, both of them would one day be trodden under my feet. Let me be a lackey. Ridiculous. I asked her whether no one had told her that Nuong Chung had already been beaten into a sickbed by me. She spat that I was trash and Nuong Chung was trash, and asked what there was to say about a duel between garbage. Then Nuong Pung's voice cut in, calling me trash for the first time. I told him the last man to call me that had left with 2 broken ribs, and asked what would happen to him. He laughed like a man who had heard the joke of his life, told me he liked my guts, and swore he would not lay a finger on me today. With less than half a month left until the competition, he said, he would make me understand there that trash is trash and always will be. A lackey can never climb onto his master's head. I told him we could settle it when the time came, and I threw the same line back at him as I turned for the door. The day of the competition would be the day he and I settled our scores. Even a silver tongue means nothing to a man who loses the fight, so I did not care to bicker. It was better to seize the time and raise my own strength, since beating Nuong Pung outright at the competition would be far more glorious than winning a war of words now. Behind me, Nuong Wu giggled that the little beggar looked down on him. Nuong Pung, secretly contemptuous of my words, told her that on the day of the contest he would deal with me in passing. I was at most a warm-up for him, not worthy of being his true opponent. The library's first floor held no books, only the quarters of its guards, who were always the family's true experts, or its elders, were the sons of the family head. The man on duty that day was around 35, and he knew me. He greeted me by remarking that I had done quite well, that no wonder I could injure his son, so I had had a breakthrough. That was right. The man on duty was none other than Noon Chung's father, the 9th son of the old family head, called 9th Master Noon. I bowed and said the disciple had come that day to study martial arts. I knew he was strong, terrifyingly so, certainly above the 4th level, because the painting rendered his figure with a blood-red warning where the data should have been. It meant the gap in strength was total and victory against him impossible. Still, I kept myself neither meek nor proud, because while I remained a family disciple, he would not dare kill me lightly. Driven out, though, I would surely die a miserable death, so my one road to life was to work hard and stay. He sneered that I certainly had guts, and told me plainly that he would not let the matter of me injuring his son rest. But as I was a disciple now, it was inconvenient for him to act, so I had better not get myself driven out, or I would undoubtedly die. It was an utterly undisguised threat. I nodded and said the disciple understood, since I understood the logic well enough. He went on, discovering that he had not actually frightened me and letting a playful ugly smile cross his face. I was an outside disciple who had entered by examination, he said. So my treatment was naturally worse than a true clansman's, and there were things he must tell me in advance so I did not break the rules. Anger stirred faintly in me, because the clan had no such rules at all, and the 9th master was plainly settling a private grudge. But my strength was too little to argue, and arguing would only make me a laughingstock, so I said calmly that he should please speak. He chuckled and told me that as an outside disciple I might enter only the 2nd floor and choose at most 2 martial arts, intermediate or lower. Whether I could even manage an intermediate one was a matter of my own judgment and luck, he said. I had 1 hour to choose, and once chosen I might keep them for 20 days, and he asked whether I had heard clearly. I was furious, because I had asked before coming. Any Nuong family disciple, inside or out, could choose at least 4 arts, take 3 hours to do it, and keep them out to cultivate for as long as 4 months. The gap was a chasm, but annoyed as I was helpless, and could only grit my teeth and nod that the disciple understood. And I certainly did, because the injustice I swallowed today I would repay 10 times, 100 times over. He told me, disdain at the corner of his mouth, that it was good I understood, and to go quickly. He was thinking that even a dog is judged by its master. Though the rules kept him from killing me, if he could force me to roll out of the family, he could then deal with me as he pleased. I took a deep breath, swallowed the foul air in my chest, and climbed the stairs toward the 2nd floor. The library was the repository of the family's classic arts, and a vital heart of the Nuong family, the accumulation and glory of a great house, a thing ordinary small families simply do not possess. The deeper a family's roots, the more arts it holds, and the finer their quality. The Nuong library had 4 floors. The first was the guards' quarters. The second held basic, low, and intermediate arts, though the low arts made up the vast bulk and the intermediate ones were said to number a bare 20, so the odds of drawing one were slim. The third held many intermediate arts, a fair number of advanced ones, and a few of the top tier, and to set foot on it a man had to be at least a 4th-level martial apprentice. The 4th was said to hold mostly top-tier arts along with the family's confidential records, and a handful of manuals rumored to have transcended the secular world, though the last was only disciples' gossip. Rules, of course, are made by people, and a main clan disciple with a background of backing, or rare talent could see many of them bent. That was exactly why Noong Chung could learn advanced arts while I was penned to the basics. For me, this chance was rare, and I meant to choose with care and try my hardest to land an intermediate art. Inside, others were already choosing, and none so much as glanced up at me, because picking one intermediate art out of thousands is no small task, even with 3 hours. And they would not waste a breath. My time was worth even more, since I had only 1 hour, so I stopped only a moment, then threw my eyes across the shelves and began. As one of the 4 great families of Cheonpung City, the Nyung family truly had deep roots, and their thousands of arts would take 3 or 4 hours to flip through one by one. That was precisely the difficulty the ninth master had built for me. I opened the first books of the first row and was dazzled, since a page or two of text made it near impossible to judge one manual's true level against another's. Splitting Palm, Blazing Fire Fist, Cheonpung 13 Swords, Swift Wind Leaf Chasing Steps, Red Sun Technique, and on and on. It was too hard, I thought. There had to be a trick. I flipped through a handful of summaries hoping for a clue. The Splitting Palm was fierce, with the momentum of a mountain, winning by brute force, and wanted a strength of 300 pounds to cultivate. The Blazing Fire Fist could condense true chi into a punch like a raging fire, terrible in its instant burst, and at the protective aura stage could even loose a blazing fire aura. Only men could cultivate it though, since it easily wounded women. The Swift Wind Leaf Chasing Steps, once mastered, greatly raised a man's speed, and it was said that of all arts only speed cannot be broken, which showed its worth. It suited slender builds and slim women best. The Iron Garment skill was a defensive body tempering art that, once mastered, could block sword and blade and greatly reduce the harm to the body. Only a man of firm will could master it though, or he would quit halfway. They all sounded so powerful that I wanted to take everyone to cultivate, and the pity was I could choose only 2, a real headache. Even without finding their ranks in the summaries, the descriptions alone had me nearly drooling, since a man who once struggled even for a low art now stood before thousands. Damn the ninth master, I thought. Others may take 4 and I may take 2. And greed is no good thing, but a man need not cultivate every art to great perfection. Take the Iron Garment skill, which for most is enough merely raised to where it strengthens the body's defense. Use 1 or 2 as the core and the rest in support, and that is the only way to lift one's strength by a real degree. A pity that I could take only 2. If only I could take more. Since with the mountains and rivers martial soul my cultivation would rise fast, and even several arts at once should be no trouble. And then it struck me. The mountains and rivers martial soul could study and perfect any art, so could it perhaps practice the arts written inside these secret manuals themselves. On entering, I had kept the martial soul dormant for fear the ninth master would sense something, and rousing it took only a turn of true chi, no harder than using a skill. So I roused it. At once a patch of cloud on the painting parted, and a new building appeared in the village. Its shape very like the Nuam Library, only lower, with a single floor. When I sent my awareness inside it, I found that every secret manual I had already read sat waiting on its shelves. When I opened a book to read, a figure appeared at once on the painting, my own figure, practicing the very art I browsed. This was too miraculous for words, and behind the shock came a surge of fierce ecstasy. It meant I could pocket every manual on this floor, keep them to cultivate or hand to others later, or even carry out to sell for coin. I did not feel this was betraying the family in the least, since the Nuong family had never once treated me, Nuong So, as one of its own, and the ninth master had openly threatened to kill me. So why should I keep the clan's secrets? Besides, the best up here reached only intermediate rank. Things a man might find outside these walls, while only the secret manuals on the 4th floor were the family's true foundation. So I stopped hesitating and sped up, flipping through the manuals, glancing only at each summary before tossing it back on the shelf. I raced to read nearly 10,000 books in 1 hour, which was no easy thing. You penned me to 2 books, ninth master, I thought, so I will steal the whole floor and drive you mad with rage. An unprecedented madness crossed my face. At first I checked each time whether the copy had landed in the painting's library, but soon I stopped bothering, since I could feel each new arrival settle in my heart the moment it came. I could not hold back my joy and laughed under my breath at what kind of martial soul this was. So powerful, and the sound drew the reading disciples' eyes to me. One of them muttered that the kid must be sick, that he had never seen anyone choose books like that, just a country bumpkin, and told the others to ignore me. Let them think it. 1 hour is neither long nor short, and by the time only a quarter of it remained I had copied nearly all of the 9,000 and more manuals on the floor. Only a few, still in disciples' hands, I had not managed to see. It is worth saying that inside the painting, the manuals did not lie scattered as they did on the real shelves. They had been sorted by kind, palm arts and saber arts and sword arts, internal skills, mind cultivation techniques, movement techniques, body tempering arts. Each stood on its own shelf, arranged from high rank to low, labeled so a glance could read them. A figure had even appeared out of nowhere to keep the place clean. The library inside my painting was finer than the Nuang library itself, and the sight left me dumbstruck and thrilled at once. Time was short, and I could not wrestle books from disciples stronger than me, so I wandered the floor hoping to catch anything I had missed in my excitement. Near the entrance, I noticed two paintings I had passed over. One showed a bull-headed, human-bodied monster gripping a great axe, the other a monkey-headed figure holding a staff. On the first were written the words, Bull Demon Skill. On the second, the words, Soaring Cloud Steps. I wondered whether these two paintings might also be secret manuals, and I reached toward one of them. A disciple of the main branch caught my hand, a third-level man stronger than me, and sent another to notify the ninth master that someone was touching the guardian painting without leave. When the ninth master arrived and heard it, he only smiled and said the guardian painting was indeed a second-floor manual, that I was welcome to touch it. The two paintings looked ordinary, but carried restrictions. He invited me, with open contempt, to take out the arts hidden behind them if I had the ability. He had his reasons for the mockery. The two sealed paintings had been left by the family's ancestors, said to suppress two extraordinary techniques, savagely hard to cultivate, but a lifelong blessing once mastered. To claim them, a man first had to break the restriction. The ancestors had never said why, only that they waited for a fated person. And in hundreds of years, everyone who tried had failed, the current powerful family head among them. The ninth master himself had tried too, wanting the techniques for his son Noon Chung, so he did not believe for a heartbeat that a beggar could succeed. The next moment his eyes nearly rolled out of his skull, because I drew both extraordinary techniques free of the paintings with almost no effort at all. One was the Bull Demon Skill, the other the Soaring Cloud Steps. He demanded I hand them over, greed washing across his face where the shock had been. And I frowned and asked whether he had not just told me that whatever I could pull loose was mine to keep. But I had already stolen a glance at each outline and copied both into the painting, because I knew an arm cannot bend a thigh. These books would be wrenched from me no matter what, and I would not leave empty-handed. He asked whether I had not heard him tell me to hand them over, and he waved a hand, and an overwhelming force sent me flying. The two techniques dropped into his palm as he laughed that it was truly effortless to find what one was looking for. Then he plucked two intermediate cultivation techniques off a shelf and tossed them to me, telling me not to sulk, that extraordinary techniques were beyond me. These two intermediate ones he had chosen were nothing to scorn, he said, and I would not lose out. I had been struck and had coughed up blood, and yet in my heart I felt almost lucky, because both extraordinary techniques were already copied in mine, and I would not forget this debt. Ninth Master Nyung, I swore inwardly, remember this, one day I, Nyung So, will make you eat this humiliation 100 times over. I said nothing, picked up the two intermediate techniques he had thrown on the floor. They happened to be the very ones I had not yet had time to copy. No sense letting them go to waste. Then I left. He watched me go, well satisfied, laughing to himself that a beggar was hardly worthy of cultivating the family's extraordinary techniques. He opened the two outlines with impatient delight, and they were indeed surprising, and indeed carried a catch. They could be cultivated only by martial artists still in the awakening stage. Past the third level, no one could touch them without first crippling his own cultivation. And who would be that stupid? He could only carry them home for his son Naum Chung to learn. I walked out of the library somewhat disheveled, pointed at and mocked the whole way. The thing had already been embellished and spread by the clan disciples. It was twisted into me trying to steal the library's arts, only to be seen through by the ninth master's wisdom eye and taught a lesson. I did not know it yet, but I understood in any case that explanation now was useless, that my one chance to prove my innocence was for my strength to surpass the ninth master's. I trusted he would not blow the matter up too far, since the truth would eventually out and he would look no better for it. The Noon family was not a monolith, so he still had things to be wary of. Home again, I opened the Soaring Cloud Steps first. It was a growth-type movement art, its summary saying that at each stage it would change its name and its conditions, while its aim stayed the same. Once cultivated, it could make a martial artist light as a swallow, treading cloud to chase the moon, riding the mists. At the very peak, a man could ride the clouds and laugh down at the 9 heavens. It could be started only in the awakening stage, where the foundation would be unstable and the whole thing fail. Even at this first stage, brought to great perfection, it let a man briefly cross the open air and fight while treading cloud for a while. That made it a near-invincible movement art anywhere below the 6th level of the protective aura stage. Reading it, all the pain in my body vanished, replaced by pure excitement. An invincible movement art below the protective aura stage, and this only its first stage, and a thing that grew so that even at the 6th level I would never need to change it. To briefly cross the open air, even to fight while treading cloud, was something I, ignorant as I was, but still a Naeung disciple, had truly never heard of. Certainly not among the intermediate movement arts, and probably rare even among the advanced ones, since the family's experts who cultivated advanced movement arts had never once been seen fighting on the clouds, truly worthy of the name extraordinary. But if it was so fine, why had the old ancestor sealed it in a painting rather than teach it to the family? Holding that confusion, I read to the last page, and there was a line of hand-brushed text. This extraordinary technique, it said, can be successfully cultivated only by one with an awakened martial soul. In an ordinary man's hands, it will yield some result, but rise no higher than an unremarkable intermediate movement art. Its difficulty is so great it drags his progress down instead, and so it was sealed. It seemed the old ancestor had known of martial souls, and might even have seen one awakened. Perhaps martial souls were not truly extinct at all, only so rare among the living that the difference hardly showed. I laughed until the room rang. Ninth Master Nuong, I thought you spent your own good name to snatch two extraordinary techniques from my hands, and you will end with nothing. I will use this one to teach your son a lesson at the year-end competition. The soaring cloud steps had a strange method though, since it had no cultivation of its own. Instead, it required that an intermediate movement art be carried to great perfection to unlock the first step heaven, with 9 step heavens in all before great perfection. So it climbed on the experience of other arts rather than any practice of its own. I checked the bull demon's skill next and found it stranger still. Where the soaring cloud steps chased grace and speed and was a movement art, the bull demon skill chased power and dominance and was a striking art. It too was a growth type, except that it grew not by storing experience but by devouring it. It ate neither true chi nor people but the cultivation experience of other arts, and mercifully the devouring was active and chosen, not automatic, or I would never have dared touch it. To consume a technique this way made that technique vanish for good. Impossible to recultivate or succeed at again, though its traits would be absorbed into the bull demon skill. Both of these could grow into things that shook heaven and earth, so both had to be cultivated, yet both demanded other martial skills first. And there at least I was rich, since the martial soul had let me copy a great pile of arts from the family library, and I could pick as many as I liked to begin. Xianpeng City sat within the North Han Kingdom, where by market price a basic martial skill sold for 10 won, an elementary one for 1,000. And an advanced one for as much as 100,000. A poor man like me had never been able to afford even the cheapest, because I could not have saved 10 won in a whole lifetime. In for a copper, in for a coin. I decided to take out some basic skills to sell, enough at least to treat grandfather's ribs, since the Neon family had shown me no kindness and I owed it none in return. I had drilled and done its chores for a year without a single coin, only rations that never filled me, so selling manuals in secret was no great matter beside that. For safety, I began with basic skills, which are common and held by more houses than this one, so no theft could be traced. I carried 10 of them to the Qianpeng City auction house, where you simply leave the goods and the house wires the silver to your account when they sell. No need to wait around. The clerks gave the basic skills no special thought, since they had seen plenty. Then I went home, because treating grandfather mattered, and so did raising my strength, for if my strength stayed low, the day would come when he was hurt again. Back in my room, I began to choose among the 9,000 and more martial skills. Though greed spoils digestion, skills are a special case, since many complement one another and speed a man's progress rather than clogging it. So I meant to pick several that worked as a set, all the more since upgrading the soaring cloud steps and feeding the bull demon skill would demand that I keep cultivating more arts. With the painting advising me, the choosing that would have eaten a day and a night took less than a quarter hour, and I settled on 5 arts the painting itself named the Soul of the Fist. Cultivated together, they could raise my cultivation speed and my true chi, gathering each by 1/10 to 1/3, and lift the power of my fist arts by 1 or 2 times over. The 5 were the Fierce Tiger descending the mountain steps, the Falling Star Fist, the Explosive Chi art, the Red Sun cultivation technique, and the Chi recovery art. A careful look showed the Falling Star Fist at the center, the other 4 in support. The Fierce Tiger descending the mountain steps was a fierce intermediate movement art whose power, aura, and speed all climbed the further I charged, like a tiger coming down a mountain. In time, it would feed the soaring cloud steps. The Red Sun cultivation technique was an intermediate internal art that raised true chi and could lay a scorching fire effect over my strikes to sharpen their bite. The Chi recovery art and the explosive chi art were a mashed pair of intermediate secret arts, one to restore true chi and one to burst it all at once. The burst let the Falling Star Fist reach its full might in an instant at the cost of draining me, a cost the recovery art was there to cover. That was the whole reason for my choices. And the reason I set the Falling Star Fist at the core was simpler still, that it was the most powerful fist art among the intermediate skills, its force rivaling some advanced ones. I have always liked to fight wide open and bold. Its flaw was the same as the explosive chi arts, a heavy thirst for true chi, which was why awakening stagemen usually avoided it. But I was no usual man, since the martial soul made my true chi thicker than my peers, and I had chosen the chi recovery art on purpose to mend the lack. For any other man, even a genius, cultivating 3 arts at once is already defiance of heaven. Yet with the martial soul study and demonstration, I could carry 5, and 5 that reinforced one another at that. That was my advantage. From this day, I was no longer that little beggar anyone could push around, and my road of martial arts would be smooth sailing. I set to work, and though I called it cultivating all 5 at once, I was only one man, so it still went in order, only faster on each than another man would manage. I chose the red sun cultivation technique first, because it raised true chi and tempered the body. True chi is the foundation beneath every movement art and every strike, the very thing by which a martial artist's realm is measured. I closed my eyes and ran the technique, and to my delight, whenever I hit a blockage or a snag, the mountains and rivers' martial soul turned itself on and cleared the path. It laid out the correct route for the true chi to flow, so it was all but impossible for me to fall into chi deviation, and the bottlenecks that cost other men months or years simply did not exist for me. It was a green road the whole way, wide open and unimpeded. My talent had never been poor, but it was nothing so genius as this, and all of it came from the special effects of the mountains and rivers' martial soul. It only made me prize the soul more and burn to understand it. Martial souls were already a mystery, and this one was plainly stranger than most, and I ached to know just how deep its wonders ran. But knowing that secret needed strength I did not yet have, and cultivation was the key that would open the painting bit by bit. Even now, as I ran the red sun cultivation technique, I could feel the mountain and river scene shifting in some quiet way, its mist thinning further as it always did. One more thing had appeared in the little village. It was an altar, and where an idol should have sat there was instead a ball of fire, a single brilliant ball of fire burning at its heart. A single hour of running the red sun cultivation technique carried it clean through to its first level. I could feel the true chi in my body thicken all at once, and the waste of my body's transformation, black and foul-smelling, seep out through my skin. My raw strength did not rise, but the toughness of my true chi and my meridians each climbed 2 or 3 measures. To reach the first level of an internal art in a single hour was a speed to frighten anyone. I was thrilled. This internal mind cultivation art held 3 levels in all, and at the 3rd level's great perfection my strikes would carry a flaming chi. I might even condense a flaming protective aura, a thing normally reserved for martial artists at the 4th level and above, which was the greatest advantage of the art. Because it was so hard to bring to great perfection, few men bothered, since to most it seemed a waste of time better spent simply raising one's strength. And once you reached the 4th level, your true chi would convert to a protective aura on its own anyway. But my thinking was different. If I could condense a protective aura while still in the awakening stage, my combat power would climb by a very great deal. I cultivated the red sun cultivation technique another hour to settle it at the 1st level, then moved on. By the martial soul's guidance, the 5 arts of the soul of the fist ripened best advanced in step. Rather than pour everything into one, I should first raise all 5 to the 1st level and then deepen them in a cycle, which was the most efficient road. Next I chose the falling star fist, a striking art, an offensive method that had to be learned. Just as the martial soul had said, once I held the red sun cultivation technique, the fist came easily. It had 9 moves in all, simple ones, chasing power rather than speed or variation, and I liked it exactly for that plainness, since it was easier to drill. In 2 short hours I had the first 6 moves, though the last 3 still fought me a little. Rather than dwell on them, I turned to the explosive chi art, a secret art of a single stage, whose use was simple. It packed a great burst of true chi onto a strike and let it out. How much to release could be controlled? 60 parts, 70, even the whole 100, a true desperado's move. I badly wanted to test the falling star fist under it there and then, but I held back, because to keep fighting I first needed the chi recovery art, the explosive chi art's matched twin. It came easily enough once the knack came, the martial soul handing it to me in a single hour. The chi recovery art had 2 uses. One was to restore true chi steadily at any time and place, though slowly. The other was to sit and meditate on the spot and refill near to the brim inside a quarter hour, though only here in the awakening stage. For men below the 3rd level, the higher a man's cultivation, the more true chi he holds, and the longer the topping off takes. The fierce tiger descending the mountain steps came simply too, its 1st level resting mainly on an aura. With my foundation I chose to drill it under the explosive chi art, and in a quarter hour broke through the 1st level. A quarter hour to recover, then back to the red sun cultivation technique under a burst again. And the 2nd level fell easily. I badly wanted a sparring partner now, because with the soul of the fist working together I believed that even against a 3rd level man I would not lose. I would not dare say I would surely win, though, unless the other also held some special technique. Thrilled by it all, I sharpened my pace, locking myself in my room except when I went out to eat. 2 days on, the red sun cultivation technique neared the 3rd level's great perfection, and I had grasped the 7th move of the falling star fist. I had mostly mastered the 108 variations of the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps 9 forms too. The trouble was the room, too small to dodge or move freely, So to truly test the fierce tiger steps, I needed open ground. The falling star fist was the same, wanting real combat. Since drilling against empty air, I would never fully grasp a striking art's true essence. My cultivation stood a hair beneath the martial vein's second-level peak, only a breath from a breakthrough, and what I needed now was perhaps simply a fight. But first the auction house, to see whether those 10 basic skills had sold, because if they had, it was time to hire a physician for grandfather, and to quietly set out 10 more. Very soon I reached the auction house, and the clerks told me all 10 basic skills had sold for 101 together, 90 after the house took its cut, already wired to my account. It more than satisfied me. The bank was next door, and I checked, and it was exactly 91. So I left another 10 basic skills, which the clerks gave no special thought, having seen plenty, and took my silver to hire a bone doctor. But just as I reached the family's side gate, I came on a knot of disciples drilling light body work among the trees. The yard could serve two, but out here the many trees and rafters in the tangled ground suited the display of footwork better. A figure shot up a trunk, dodging and flitting branch to branch like a spirit ape, then dropped light to the ground. The others cried that it was fine footwork, that senior brother Noon B had the best light body art in the whole elite hall. Even where he was slightly weak elsewhere, on footwork alone he could make many of his peers miserable. In a world of martial arts, only speed cannot be broken, they said, and with such footwork he might well take first place in the elite hall at the year-end competition. A crowd of them shouted it endlessly below. I wondered how my own fierce tiger descending the mountain steps measured against this Neung Bai, itching to try because his footwork truly was strong. I would not pretend otherwise. And yet I was unconvinced. Perhaps spurred by the praise, Neung Bi changed direction several times in midair, elegant to look at, but from some lack of follow-up strength he nearly fell at the end. Seeing me, he made to plant a foot on my shoulder to save his face. I had no grudge against him, but I was unwilling to be a stepping stone, so I simply kicked a foot up into the air to give him a rung. He landed gracefully with a flash of anger on his face. The others fawned that senior brother Nung was truly amazing, that even like that it worked, like a flying swallow. None of them realized he had grown too complacent and nearly made a fool of himself, and they praised him for all they were worth. Watching Nungbi's expression, I could not help shaking my head. These main clan disciples were all arrogant and yet narrow, free to trample your shoulder at will, and furious the moment your foot did them a kindness. I could not be bothered to bicker, in a hurry to get the doctor to grandfather's ribs. Just as I took a step, a white shadow flashed past, and the box in the physician's hand vanished. Noonbi had hung it on a branch more than 30 feet up. I asked, frowning, what he was doing. He said calmly, as if it were of no account, that he only wanted to test my movement technique. A few disciples looked at me puzzled, asking who I was, though some among them knew me. One supplied it for the rest, that I was the beggar who had entered the family a year ago through the great examination. In a year, my strength had crawled only to the first level. I had offended both Noon Chung and Noon Pung of the elite hall, he said, and even the Noon Wu once attentive to me had become senior brother Pung's woman. Another added that senior brother Noon Chung had let me off and I had not known what was good for me, ambushing him by despicable means. Though it seemed I had advanced to the second level. He said, a few days ago I had gone to the scripture library and been punished for trying to steal books. This kind of person did not deserve to be a Noon disciple. They agreed. So no wonder senior brother Noon B wanted to tease him. They doubted I could get the box down today, since I probably knew no footwork at all. Every word was a knife, and every word was bent, and it was as I had always known, that without strength the man is bullied everywhere. Noong Chung, Noong Pung, Noong B, Noong Wu. If I stayed first level trash, still more would bully me in the years ahead. Forget it, I thought. Today's the perfect time to test the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps anyway. Ignoring Nuong B and the rest, I looked at the box 30 feet up, ran my true chi and loosed the fierce tiger steps. I badly overjudged the force and cracked my own skull straight into the trunk. Since using so fierce a movement art for the first time, I could not yet control it. I told myself to hold back a little next time. Noon B and the others roared with laughter, some of them squatting in the dirt with tears streaming down. I did not mind. Everything has a first time, and I had used too much force, so this time I would simply restrain it. I roused the mountains and rivers' martial soul so that a perfectly measured amount of true chi poured into my legs. I loosed the fierce tiger steps again, like a tiger leaving the mountain, roaring as I lunged at the trunk. This time I leaped onto the tree cleanly, though still a hair short of the box, and the laughter froze all at once and every face went blank. Even Neyoung B was startled, because he could tell my footwork was no small thing, that even some elite hall disciples might not match it. The others rushed to comfort him and themselves, saying the kid did not even understand it himself. By the look of my face I was still clueless, a blind cat bumping a dead mouse. Pure luck. Even if I had got a light body art from the scripture library, it had only been a few days, they said. So how could I have learned it, that I had only jumped higher on a surge of true chi? Ugly as their faces were, they always found reasons to comfort themselves. But the next moment they could find none. With a low shout, I stepped the trunk like a nimble tiger or a dexterous mountain cat, drifted up light, took the box, and drifted back down to land steady on my feet. Now no reason would serve them, since with footwork like that, even Noong B might not compare. Intermediate movement arts are truly powerful, I thought, gratified, and I wondered how the soaring cloud steps would feel once I dared it. The crowd, having regained their senses, asked whether I was a genius, that in a few days I had gone from no footwork at all to this, that it was too outrageous. Some of them, who had drilled light body arts for a year or two without reaching what I had just shown, felt distinctly sour about it. I told the doctor to come along, that my grandfather was waiting, and the physician, half stunned from watching, came back to himself. He told me my light body art had truly opened his eyes, mistaking me, an ordinary man, for some young lord of the Nuong family, since how else could I have such skill? One of the disciples jeered that the young master should not be fooled, that this was just a little beggar, only lucky, and dared me to do it again. Sure, I would be exposed. They blocked my path, unwilling to let a little beggar ride on their heads. To be honest, alone against so many I had no confidence of winning, since counting Young B there were several third-level men among them. But since they insisted on embarrassing themselves, I would simply perform the footwork once more. The fierce tiger steps were only basic, and what I truly wanted to cultivate was the soaring cloud steps, so it did not matter if I exposed them. I told them that since they wanted to see it, they could see it again. I pointed to a fruit high in the tree and said we would use it, that if I brought it down they would all stop pestering me. They scoffed that I was bragging, that the fruit was a good 60 feet from the ground and even senior brother Naeun B might not manage it. One of them swore that if I truly got it, he would crawl the tree twice and bark like a dog. Nguyen B said calmly that a third-level man's light body ceiling was about 50 feet, that I boasted too much, speaking from common sense, and the disciples agreed, waiting for me to make a fool of myself. I chuckled inwardly, since Neung B had repaid my kindness with spite. Now someone wanted to bark like a dog, the perfect chance to dampen their arrogance and make them think twice before bullying me again. I gathered my chi in secret, condensing true chi in my martial veins and channeling it through my meridians into my legs. Then I loosed the explosive chi art beneath the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps. I knew Neung B was right about the ceiling, but with the burst my footwork could easily clear 60 feet. A wind rose as I stepped into the air, leaping near 60 feet in an instant, and just as I was about to pluck the fruit, a pebble shot in from the side. I had long been braced for someone playing dirty, since with this narrow-hearted bunch anything was possible. So when the pebble streaked at my face I threw a punch, the seventh form of the falling star fist, falling stars and scattered rain, and the stone was struck back the way it had come. Someone screamed, but I had no attention to spare, an inch from the fruit. Better to pick it first, though having deflected the pebble I no longer had the strength to keep hovering. At the critical moment I did not give up, and using the last of my true chi I punched down at the empty air, the eighth form of the falling star fist, heavenly fire assault. It was so fierce that the recoil gave my foot the thrust to reach the fruit, and whether by hand or foot a picked fruit counts. My foot knocked it loose, I caught it, and my body plummeted. Just as I was about to smash into the ground at speed, the chi recovery art took effect and forcibly halted me a yard up, so that I settled rather than splattered. I did not make a fool of myself at the last, my landing not even too awkward. I asked with a sneer, squeezing the fruit, which of them had just sworn to bark like a dog around the tree. Every loud mouth of a moment ago had gone suddenly deaf, each of them dropping his head, refusing to speak. I had long known these people for spineless cowards, so I only smiled in disdain and did not press, waving the doctor along and starting for the courtyard. As far as I was concerned, the matter should have ended there. Acting cool and walking off is a damn exciting thing. I did not expect that 2 steps on, someone else would start howling, Miun B bellowing at me to stop right there, that I had struck someone and now meant to flee. I turned back, and it was Neon B, his face green, his eyes spitting fire, angry as a fighting rooster. And yet the aura of his third-level strength still pressed hard on those around him. I asked, puzzled when I had ever hit anyone. He is stronger than me, but he was bullying too far, and I had no need to shrink. He snorted that I was playing dumb, that the pebble thrower's forehead had been split by me, the blood running like that, and asked how I still dared deny it. At his words, a few of the onlookers looked faintly embarrassed, but most were as shameless as he was. They cried that an outsider daring to strike a Nuong clan disciple must have eaten the guts of a bear and a leopard. They begged senior brother Nuong to teach me a lesson, calling me not qualified to cultivate with them. It was an uproar of manufactured anger. I had always known the clan disciples looked down on us outsiders, but I had not expected them to be quite so shameless. I laughed with my anger showing, and said that when I was picking the fruit someone had sneak attacked me with a pebble. I had deflected it, and if he was hurt then he deserved it. People live for face, trees live for bark. Before the mountains and rivers martial soul I had feared no one, and now that I held it, was I to act timid before these people? Besides, the other side was plainly looking for trouble. So timid or not, I would not escape a beating, and I would rather simply fight it out. One of them said that I still dared talk back and ask senior brother Noom what they should do, except for a few who felt real shame and quietly slipped aside. The rest closed around me in a ring, apparently meaning to gang up because they had lost face. Then someone shouted that the senior sister was back, and the crowd, which had been staring at me like hungry hyenas, all turned to look the same way. It was a girl in white, like an ice and snow fairy walked out of a fairyland, with bright eyes and white teeth and skin like carved ivory. Though she only walked, she captivated every eye. One youth, all but kneeling, breathed that there could be no such perfect woman in the world, that she was a goddess made by heaven and earth. I was already gone from his eyes, his whole being taken up by her. This was Neung Ilseol, 16 years old, the third-ranked woman of the elite hall, rumored already at the Marshall Vane third-level peak, only a thin line from the fourth. I looked at her too, since she was also the perfect woman in my own mind, though my bearing was far steadier than the others, and my regard for her was less for her beauty than for her strength. Like me, Neung Ilseol had entered the Neung family as an outer sect disciple through the Great Examination, and yet our circumstances could not have been more different. She had climbed to the third-level peak inside a single year, beating elite hall disciples one after another, to rise into third place, every resource won by her own effort. It was unlike Nung Peng, 10th in the elite hall, who leaned on the main family's advantages. That is what a genius means. In the old days, my mark had been Neung Ilseol, because I believed my own aptitude was no less than hers, and the facts had borne it out. But for that ruined, incomplete technique, my progress might have kept pace, and I would likely have been no worse than she was. But as they say, a blessing wears strange clothes. I lost many things and gained the mountains and rivers martial soul, which was its own kind of fortune. Before this, I had not dared even look at her, out of the plain shame that though we entered the family together, and both highly regarded, our fates had since split like winter and summer. Today I did not care. She was a genius, and I would catch up soon. As she approached, the disciples led by Nuong Bi went up to greet her, so attentive and so warm. And the sight only drove the lesson deeper into me, that this was a world where the strong are honored. With strength enough, Nuong Bi would not dare trouble me but would treat me with respect, and no one would dare call me little beggar to my face, at most muttering it behind my back. Through the crowd I studied her beauty, and the mountains and rivers' martial soul woke of itself and read her situation through and through. Sure enough, I thought, her true chi has already begun to change, part of it condensed into protective aura. When the quantity turns to quality, that will be when she breaks through into the protective aura stage in the 4th level. I felt a little pressure at that, but pressure is only fuel, so I would work the harder. To my surprise, she remembered me, and she asked why they had all been surrounding me. The group led by Nuing Bi chattered away, recounting the earlier events, and naturally the version from their mouths had been artistically embellished, since twisting the truth was a specialty of theirs. She looked at me indifferently and asked whether it was so. I wanted to explain and held the words back, because I would settle my own troubles rather than lean on a woman. Besides, if I spoke and no one believed me, the awkwardness would only double, so I kept silent. Nuong Bi said loudly that she had seen it, that my silence was confession. I sneered and asked him whether he was even a man, when he knew better than I did what had happened just now, and now wanted to drag senior sister Nuong Ilseol into it. He snapped at me to say that again, because a fine lady is a good match for a gentleman. In the family, Nuing Ilseol was the secret object of many hearts, his among them, so he could not stand to lose face before her under any circumstances. I said calmly that I spoke the truth, and asked what there was to fear. He said that fine, since the senior sister was there he would not argue with me, but that I must pay the injured man's medical fee and apologize to him before everyone. He badly wanted to beat me, but with her present he could not easily strike, lest he be accused of bullying the weak with numbers, so he played the righteous elder. I asked whether he truly wanted me to apologize to a despicable, shameless ambusher, and whether his brain had been burnt to a crisp. At that even Nuong Ilseol frowned, plainly thinking me a boy freshly into the 2nd level overrating himself to bait a 3rd level senior. In her eyes strength was backbone, and its lack was a death wish. Nuong Bi told her she had heard it, that this man had injured a clansman and refused to apologize. As a senior he had no choice but to discipline him, looking to her for a reason to strike. She said indifferently that clansmen trading blows only harmed the family's harmony, and that since Nuong Bi himself had praised my footwork, why not settle it as a contest of movement technique? If he won, she would make me apologize. He agreed to listen to the senior sister and asked whether I dared compete with him in footwork. Though he had seen my footwork, he was unafraid, First, because he was more confident and thought himself the stronger. Second, I had plainly all but emptied my true chi, so a contest now favored him. I answered that of course I dared, sneering inwardly that since he wanted to show off before Nung Ilseol, I would make him lose face completely. I had seen his footwork and thought it not so brilliant, and though on the fierce tiger steps alone I probably could not beat him, I had the mountains and rivers' martial soul. Its study and simulation could hand me the initiative in any contest, an advantage he did not have. He said I had some guts, though he feared it was only reckless stupidity, and he asked Nung Ilseol to stand witness, so that no one could later refuse to admit defeat. She agreed, still holding some interest in the match, because within the elite hall, Noonbi's footwork ranked in the top 3, and he might be an opponent at this year's competition, so watching him beforehand would do her no harm. As an outer sect disciple, she could gain large rewards only through such family contests. She was a practical person who would never spout nonsense about winning dishonorably, and she had never once seen anyone cry unfair when the main clan disciples secretly cultivated advanced arts. She had no interest in me at all, only unwilling to see an outsider bullied too badly, and her plan was simply that I would concede, apologize, and be done. She had not counted on my agreeing to a footwork contest instead. By now the onlookers had swelled, many come for Nung Ilseol, and hearing of the match they were all dismissive. It was not because they scorned Nung Bi, but because the thing bored them, a speed race between a goshawk and a turtle holding no suspense. One of them remarked that Neon B had always said he would save his trump for the competition, but today, before the senior sister, he would surely pull out all the stops to put on a show. Everyone smiled, admiring her beauty and watching him warm up, since who would care about a man destined to lose? Someone said they had not yet said how to compete, and another answered with the old rules, the 3 events they always used. First was void crossing, where you draw a starting line and see how far you cross the air without your feet touching down, which measures distance. Second was ascending the heavenly ladder, where without any object you see who leaps highest, which measures height. Third was a footspeed race, a round trip of 100 yards where the faster wins. 3 simple events with simple judging, and the simpler such a contest is, the more it reveals a man's true strength, since there is little room to cheat. Nung B said that as their junior I had already used my footwork just now and must have spent a great deal, so as a senior he would give way and go first. He was thinking that in so short a time my true chi could not possibly have recovered, which let him seem fair and noble besides, and gain face before her. Had he known my chi recovery art could refill me in a quarter hour, he would never have made so stupid a choice. Someone praised him for it, saying he was worthy of the name, unlike some who injure others and refuse to apologize, not fit to be Nung disciples. Nung B, hearing it, was well satisfied as he took the line. At Nung Ilseol's word, he soared into the air like a swift and flew forward. They cried that it must be 15 yards, that he had broken the record again. Crossing 15 yards through the air might not sound like much alone, but among the current elite hall disciples the best record was 14.5. And that too was his own. So he had broken his own mark. Everyone was stunned, since Nung B might be middling elsewhere, but his footwork was truly the elite hall's finest. Nung Ilseol shook her head and said she could not compare to him. He answered, with a light laugh, that she was too modest, that his footwork was merely decent, nothing worthy of her Dharma eye. His words were humble and his face full of excitement, since having gained face before her, how could he not be pleased? For the second event he gave the crowd another huge shock, leaping 18 yards straight up and landing gracefully, stylish and steady both. He looked at me and said, with a light laugh, that it was my turn now, that the speed race needed 2 at once, so I should finish the first 2 events first. Every eye finally settled on me, filled with disdain and a hint of pity, the way one pities a beggar at the roadside. No one believed my footwork could pass his, not even those who had watched the fruit. I said, smiling faintly, that there was no need to remind me, and walked to the line. On footwork alone I was indeed his inferior, that was certain. But I had cultivated the explosive chi art, which could near double my footwork in an instant, so surpassing him was perhaps no trouble. They muttered that I was putting on an act, seeing my indifferent face, and at Nung Ilseol's word I soared. At first I did not use the burst, wanting to hoard true chi across 3 events, and I did not need to shock anyone, only to pass him. Nung Ilseol frowned slightly and thought that the kid's footwork was not bad, that though it lacked his grace it was proper, and she had truly not expected me to master it so well so fast. At about 12 yards my body began to fall. They laughed that I had lost, that they had said I could not match senior brother Nung Bai, though 12 yards was not bad, not too embarrassing. And just then, about to land, my body was shoved forward by something and I abruptly shot better than 4 yards farther before I touched down. The scene fell silent, as if everyone had gone mute. Nung Ilseol was the first to speak, saying it was more than 16 yards. Her surprise turned to shock, wondering what had happened to me, how I could improve so fast. Nuing B suddenly shouted that I had cheated. She shook her head and said it was not cheating, and asked whether a Nuum disciple had truly never heard of the secret art called the explosive chi art that sat in the library pavilion. Of course he had heard of it, but secret arts are harder to cultivate than techniques and cruelly hard to understand, and he had never once imagined I had learned it. Trembling with anger, unconvinced, he had no choice but to admit defeat. The second event was ascending the heavenly ladder. My motions were never as stylish as his, but they were practical, and just as before, the burst came when I felt myself about to fall. At a height of about 12 yards, I still surged to 20. The referee called that I had won the second event, and I had taken both crossing the air and ascending the ladder, jaws dropping all around. Now no one dared call my footwork weak, ugly as it looked. I looked at his face, gone the color of a pig's liver, and asked whether there was still need for the third event. He all but shouted that of course we would compete, that in the Tao of footwork speed is paramount. I told him I had meant to give him some face and call it a day, but why bother? He snarled at me to stop the crocodile tears, certain my true chi must be spent, that I could not sustain a third event. If he took me easily in the race, then even having lost the match he could win back much face and humiliate me besides. I said there ought to be a stake then, since I had already won and had no need to keep wasting time. He had no choice but to agree, since if I refused he could not force me, and would lose still more face. And he said that if I could still win, he would pay all the silver for my grandfather's treatment. I told him there was no need, that I had silver, since in the old days I might have taken such a term, but now I did not care for it. He roared to ask what I wanted then. I said a breakthrough pill, because I meant to reach the third level by the competition, and the pill was essential. The crowd cried that it was too much, asking who takes a breakthrough pill as a stake. A few reasonable voices allowed that I had already won by the best of three and there was no need for a third round at all, which gave me a thin hope for this family. I shrugged and made to call the doctor away, and that broke him, and he shouted his agreement. When his own friends begged him not to be rash, that it was not worth it, he saw in the crowd's talk that their full confidence in him had curdled to doubt. It showed how much face he had already lost, so the third event had to be run all the more, to win back his standing. I asked Nuing Ilseol to please witness, since these people's promises were worth about as much as passing wind, and I dared not trust them lightly. She said that if he would not give it, she would give it for him. Her interest in my footwork plainly caught now, so that she wanted to watch too. We took the line together, and about 100 yards off stood two disciples we were to round and return past. First back wins. No aerial flourishes needed, only speed. Every eye fixed on me, eager to know whether a man who had made two miracles could make a third. At Nuing Ilseol's word, we shot off almost as one. He a swallow in flight, I a fierce tiger down a mountain. He through the air and I running on the ground. The disciples backing him laughed that I thought myself a tiger so ugly. The laughter cut off, because ugly as my running was, it tore a wind through the air that rippled it, and its speed was in no way beneath his. At the far markers we rounded almost together, he barely a body length up, and everyone knew I still held the explosive chi art in reserve. If I could match him without it, what would happen if I used it? On the turn back I burst my chi and became an arrow loosed from the string, reaching the line 3 full body lengths ahead of him. One man stood and cried that I was too crazy, and more of them were left dull and stunned, because they understood what such speed meant, a vast advantage in a fight. They asked how it could be, that Nuing B was already one of the fastest in the elite hall, that I was 3 body lengths quicker. This guy was a monster, they said. 2 or 3 days in the library and his footwork was like this, that it was impossible. Nuing B, pale and bloodless, knelt in a daze, muttering that he could not have lost, his years of built reputation ruined in a stroke, and a breakthrough pill to cough up besides. He could not understand it, because one of his own older brothers had once cultivated the explosive chi art with the same aim. Though the burst truly raised speed and strength for an instant, its cost was so huge it could not be afforded. Yet here I had used it 3 times over, and still seemed to have energy left. Whether he understood or not, the match was over, and I had won all 3, and he had lost badly. Nuing Ilseol drew out a breakthrough pill and pressed it into my hand, telling me that as her junior I had truly been hiding my strength, and to take it. She knew well that had I gone to Nuing B for it, I would not have gotten it, but that she need not ask, since he would send it to her without a word. In truth, because we had entered the family together with near equal talent, she had always watched me closely. As the gap widened, our chances to speak had thinned to nothing, until today she seemed to glimpse again the high-spirited, ambitious Nong So of the beginning. I thanked her and asked whether I could leave now, and when I took the pill from her hand, my fingers brushed her skin, and in that instant it was truly like an electric shock. This feeling was too special. I wondered whether it was a boy's anticipation of a girl, the feeling every boy meets on reaching a certain age, and I found I really wanted to keep holding her palm, soft and smooth and gently warm. The onlooker's eyes spat fire at that, and I smiled faintly, took the pill, thanked her, and started for the courtyard, my day's business finally done. Any longer, and I truly could not take it, and I reckon the poor doctor had waited long past patience. The disciples who had blocked the road all hurriedly cleared a path, which is the whole majesty of the strong, since I had beaten Neon B on my strength, and had earned it. The doctor, not annoyed at all, gave me a thumbs up and called me amazing, mistaking me for some young lord of the family. I only smiled bitterly and said nothing, thinking that if he had been a pretty young girl I might have enjoyed the praise more. I told him to come along, that I had delayed him badly today and would reward him later. I had barely stepped through the courtyard gate when two men came toward me, and one was none other than the ninth master's son, Noong Chung. He was the unlucky fellow whose ribs I had broken in one move, unexpectedly up and full of vigor after only a few days. He said he had gone to my place to look for me and could not find me. That very good, since we had met, we would settle old scores anew. Last time I had not known what was good for me and had ambushed the young master, he said, and today he would beat me until I crawled the ground looking for my teeth. It would be best if he broke a few of my ribs too. His face was brimming with excitement and malice, since days shut in recovering had nearly driven him mad with boredom, thinking every day of revenge, of venting on me. Though his father had vented for him at the library, it was not enough, because he wanted to beat me himself and shame me before everyone, aggrieved at having been felled in one move. The man at his side was his cousin, a direct disciple at the peak of the awakening stage, brought along by the look of it, in case I ran. Noong Il-sol noticed the situation and asked, frowning, what was going on. Noong B told her she probably did not know yet, that before entering the library, Noong So had used despicable means to beat senior brother Noong Chung in one move, and even broken his ribs. Junior brother Noong Chung was here for revenge, he said. She repeated the words despicable means, doubting. Another added that they said senior brother Noong Chung had gone easy on me, and I had not appreciated it, and sneak attacked. She sneered and asked whether they truly believed such nonsense. When had that Noong Chung ever gone easy on anyone in a duel? Fairy though she was, she lived in the real world and knew the warmth and coldness of it, and something of the family's inner truth. She had once met the same plight as I, only less often, her progress being fast. She had already decided to step in, because I had just finished the footwork contest and my true chi must be low. Meeting Noon Chung now, I might not win even if I could fight, but some were glad of it. Noon be chief among them, a gloating look on his face the moment he saw me blocked. I told them to stop the nonsense, that if they wanted to fight, then fight. I did not like trouble, but I did not fear it, and I had stopped taking Noon Chung seriously long ago. With the ninth master forever throttling my cultivation, I thought, I may not be able to reach the father, but can I not handle the son? Noon Chung sneered that I was actually not afraid, and told me not to think that reaching the second layer let me act high before the young master, that today I would kneel. He had reached the second level peak nearly half a year past, combined with an advanced art, so he thought he had the standing to look down on me. I told him he talked too much, and that I still had to treat my grandfather. Finding himself looked down on by the very trash he had bullied for a year, his anger flared and true chi flooded his palms. In the days since, his giant spirit god palm had been drilled by his father's own hand, and was far stronger than before. And his father had gotten him many pills to raise his true chi besides, so he was full of confidence. He struck out like a giant spirit descending on the world, the palm wind lifting my hair. He has comprehended the giant spirit god palm to perhaps 30 parts, I judged, which for a second level peak man was already very impressive, since advanced arts are hard to master. Even Noong Il-sol showed surprise and then a flash of annoyance, because his aptitude was less than hers, his effort less than hers. Yet he could obtain heaps of pills and an advanced art, which was simply unfair. She, about to break into the 4th level, had earned her own advanced art only by her aptitude, and knew both the difficulty of cultivating one and its power. Even at 30 parts, an advanced art crushes all intermediate ones, the gap of a whole class. This aura, this power, this speed, I thought, at least twice as strong as last time. It truly is good to have a good father. Though I did not take Noong Chung seriously, I would never underrate an enemy in a fight, so I roused the mountains and rivers marshal's soul and all his data came up. I could be sure that although his realm had not risen, his real combat power was at least twice what it was, only unstable, not solid. Likely because he had eaten too many pills. Using the martial soul to pinpoint his weakness, I no longer hesitated. I ran the red sun cultivation technique until my fists glowed bright red, then loosed the fierce tiger descending the mountain steps to pounce on him like a tiger. Today I did not mean to dodge the giant spirit god palm. I meant to go head on and forcibly crush him, to deal his pride a heavier blow, and to be rid of his hounding, since I had no time to keep company with him. Facing my counterattack, he was plainly taken aback, not having expected me to know so fierce a fist. Thinking it over though, his palm was advanced and my falling star fist only intermediate, so there was nothing to fear. What followed terrified him. To crush him completely, I loosed the explosive chi art too, this time holding nothing back, erupting every drop of true chi in my body. Falling star fist, 8th form, heavenly fire assault. With the terrible boost of the burst, the move's power multiplied several times over. In that instant, what stood before Nung Chung was no longer me, but a burning falling star. A fierce tiger flying off the horizon. Fist and palm collided head-on, with no ornament at all. Both arts lived on power, and aura, his advanced and mine intermediate, and yet an intermediate strike lifted several times over closes that gap to nothing. So I drove the 8th form to a level even advanced arts would shrink from. To put it plainly, an advanced art simply has greater power, and multiply an intermediate one enough, and there is almost no difference. His arms snapped clean at the collision, and the impact his body could not withstand flung him off his feet, and he crashed into the wall, coughing a mouthful of fresh blood, his eyes going unfocused. I feared for a heartbeat that I had killed him, genuinely afraid. If I had, the 9th Master would surely come to fight me to the death, since killing and injuring are two different things. He was not dead. He slid down the wall and struggled to rise, arms hanging useless, shaking his head wildly, unable to believe it that an advanced art of his could lose to mine. Another one-move defeat, and by the same man both times, and the watching disciples all breathed hard and fast, unable to accept it. In a fight between men of the same level, victory is hard to call, and anyone may win. But to be beaten in a single move, and by an intermediate art no less, was too much to swallow. I confirmed he lived and led the doctor away in a hurry, because my true chi was truly exhausted now, and if another challenger came, I could not have handled it. Watching me go, the corner of Neung Ilseol's mouth twitched, since she had not foreseen this either. She thought to herself that the explosive chi art wedded to the falling star fist had loosed power fiercer than the advanced giant spirit god palm. This Neung So might just stun the whole competition. When Neung Bi asked what sorcery I had used to beat Neung Chung in one move, watching him carried off, sick with jealousy, she told him coldly to stop chasing nonsense and mind his own martial arts. My beating him before her had left her a deep impression of me. His aptitude was not bad, she said, and had he been more focused he would not have lost the footwork today. She said that though both of us were at the second layer, my true chi ran deeper than Neung Chung's, and that I was skilled at weaving arts together. The single punch had braided 4 of them, the falling star fist, the fierce tiger steps, the explosive chi art, and the red sun cultivation technique. She asked who else on that field could do the same. One of them asked how I could be so powerful, whether I had been playing the pig to eat the tiger all along. She shook her head and said that was likely not it, that perhaps I had had a sudden epiphany. Another asked where I had got so many intermediate arts, and she said she was not sure, but that intermediate arts could be bought at auction houses. And the ones I cultivated were nothing unique, so it was normal. In truth, she was more puzzled than she let on, my power being passed out whatever its source. The 9th Master will probably not act himself, I judged on the way home, since if he did, the matter would become ammunition against him. A name for bullying the weak and leaning on strength to oppress others sounds ugly, gossip enough to drown a man. But Neung Chung has a cousin, Neung Chol-su, second only to Neung Peng in the elite hall at the 11th rank, at the 3rd level peak, so I expect he will act. Back in my residence, I had the doctor examine grandfather's body, and a broken rib is not hard to treat but wants some fairly precious ingredients, which are dear. So the 91 I had just gotten went straight into medicine, though I did not regret it, since treating him was worth it. The doctor told me to go and get the ingredients. He had written clearly which were for outside and which for inside, and with a month of faithful use he should be fully recovered. I saw the doctor off, went for the medicine, returned to brew it, settled grandfather to rest, and went out again. I knew that having injured Neung Chung, trouble would surely follow, so I had to keep raising my strength. My fierce tiger descending the mountain steps had now reached major achievement, so it was time to unlock the first step of the soaring cloud steps. To avoid being disturbed, I climbed the wall and went to a wood most of a mile from the family residence. The fierce tiger steps under the explosive chi art are already enough to beat Neung Bi, I thought, so I wonder how powerful the soaring cloud steps will be. A little excited, I unlocked the first step through the martial soul. That was only unlocking it, and mastering it still took cultivation, though the drilling would be simpler now. This miraculous technique was truly miraculous, since so troublesome and difficult a method surely promised an effect worth the trouble. That was exactly why I had the will to cultivate it. Perhaps from the foundation of the fierce tiger steps and the martial soul's help, I mastered the first step's realm in just an hour. Though the soaring cloud steps holds 9 steps in all, this was only the beginning. But after testing its effect, I felt that however hard it was truly worth it. In the wood I tried it, And the conclusion was this, that even without the explosive chi art, the first step matched a perfected fierce tiger steps used without the burst. With the burst, it was distinctly stronger than the fierce tiger steps also using the burst, and this was only the first step. I wondered whether the soaring cloud steps was in fact not an extraordinary but merely an advanced art, since otherwise the effect could not be this good, and the thought only gave me more will to cultivate it. It was simple why I chose to cultivate it before the bull demon skill, because a movement art is a good tool both for combat and for escape. And I, Nyung-so, have only one life, and only by keeping it can I grow stronger. While I was busy raising my strength, Nung Chung had been carried to the family medicine hall, the place where the Nung family refines pills and treats injuries and illnesses. Ninth Master Nung Chung arrived with Nung Chael-su, and seeing Nung Chung's ruined state he roared to know who had injured his son. So angry he shattered a stone stool with one palm. The trembling disciple who had brought Nung Chung named me. The Ninth Master was stunned, having braced for some expert, and asked whether it truly was that I seemed to hold a unique skill for braiding arts together, my strength terrifyingly strong. I had beaten senior brother Nung Chung to this in a single move. The Ninth Master cursed him for trash, and when the disciple hurried to agree that Nung-so was indeed trash, the Ninth Master snapped that he had meant his own son. He had spent every effort breaking family rules to get his son advanced arts and heaps of pills, and the boy had lost twice to me in single moves, and the shame of it choked him. Then his nephew soothed him, telling him not to be too angry that no matter what, Nung Chung was his son, and that he would take care of that Nung-so for him. This was Nung Chael-su, 11th in the elite hall behind Nung Peng, at the Martial Vein 3rd level peak, who called the Ninth Master father in all but name. The Ninth Master sighed and said he was the most reliable one, that he wished the boy were his own son. Only a year older than Naeung Chung, yet already with 60 parts of the giant spirit god palm mastered in cultivation at the 3rd level peak. Dealing with a Naeung-so would be as easy as swatting an ant. Nung Chael-su said that for years he had looked on the Ninth Master as his own father. His worthless father had died early, and but for the Ninth Master taking him in, he would have nothing today. The Ninth Master told him it was well said, that from now on he was his own son, that he need only ask for anything and it would be satisfied. To beat a dog, one looks at its master, he said, and Nyung-so did need a lesson, but the competition was near, so there was no rush. Then they would make the brat lose face before all the Nyung disciples. None of that would have changed a thing I did, even had I overheard it. Past the first step, the soaring cloud steps demanded 2 intermediate movement arts before it would yield the second. So I set it aside and turned back to the falling star fist and the red sun cultivation technique, meaning to carry both to great perfection first. A man cannot win a fight only by fleeing it. Internal arts and striking arts raise a man's raw power far more than movement arts, while secret arts do nothing to raise cultivation at all. That is why serious martial artists keep their list of techniques short and pour themselves into their internal art and their strikes. A single day's work bore rich fruit, the red sun cultivation technique to its 5th layer, the falling star fist finally opening its 9th move, falling star descent. Only the seasoning of real combat was left before great perfection, a thing no cultivation can give, only honing in a fight. Through the martial soul's display I could see my true chi a full half thicker than a day before. That meant more uses of the explosive chi art and a heavier falling star fist behind each. The most obvious change inside the painting was that the flames on the altar burned far more vigorously than before. I vaguely felt that everything in that painting was somehow bound to my own body, though I could not yet see how. 2 more days passed, and the falling star fist reached great perfection under effortless control, flawless against the martial soul's standard. The red sun cultivation technique climbed to its 9th layer great perfection with my true chi surging again, carrying my cultivation to the martial vein's 2nd level peak with both veins tempered iron hard. Now the thickness of my true chi, the force of my strength, and the toughness of my body would not lose to a man of the 3rd level. In roughly a week I had gone from the trash and waste of everyone's mouth to a 2nd level peak martial artist, whose strength had multiplied several times over. The source of all of it was the awakening of the mountains and rivers' martial soul, which fascinated me more by the hour, but wanting to break through to the 3rd level hit a small snag. A clean breakthrough wants outside help to ease the passage and ward off chi deviation, which is to say pills, a breakthrough pill, a heart protection pill, and a vein protection pill. I held only the one breakthrough pill knowing Ilseal had won me, far from enough. With 1 life and no protector to guard me through the passage, I had to guard myself, and the other 2 pills were essential. After eating at home, I did not keep cultivating but entered my room to plan the future. Once I would not have dared even think of the competition, and now it was different, since I was certain that on its very day I would break into the 3rd level. A good showing would make me a disciple the family truly nurtured, with resources and a monthly stipend and a life nothing like this one. I would stand above the likes of Nuang Peng and Nuang Bi. even Nuangyosio, even the young geniuses of the other houses of the city. Then a thought struck me. The mountains and rivers' martial soul seemed more than a place to study and analyze, since inside it there were villages and land. Perhaps one could even plant medicinal herbs there, raise fierce beasts, and pills are refined from only two things, plants and animals. If I wanted pills, I first needed materials, and if I could grow plants and raise Yao beasts inside the painting, that would be wonderful. The powerful study and simulation, joined to the growing of cultivation resources, would be simply perfect. I had to go and try. I looked out at the vast dense forest behind the family residence. Cheonpung City was ringed on every side by mountains men called the Bokryong Range. Thick forested and tangled, its highest peak better than 8,000 yards tall and snow-capped the year round. Very spectacular. It was so vast that even from that peak a man could not see the whole of it, and no one truly knew its size. Legend put a dragon coiled within it, though no one had ever seen the thing. But the Yao beasts were real, and many existences martial artists both feared and loved. They were feared because they were powerful and terrible, and loved because their parts could be sold for coin and used in alchemy to refine pills. Yao beasts were sorted by men into 10 ranks, data one with their own blood and experience. And a beast's rank matched a martial artist's level, so that a rank 1 Yao beast roughly equaled a first level man. A beast is born special though, and usually the stronger of the two in a real fight. The fabled rank 10 beast king could easily destroy a kingdom, a thing no one wished to meet. I was not going in to profit or to hunt, but to find some special herbs and a few Yao beast cubs, to see whether I could plant and raise them inside the painting. Once I could, I would breed the rarer plants and animals myself, a huge advantage. I vaulted the family wall and struck a pose and loosed the soaring cloud steps toward the Bokryong range. Even without the explosive chi art, I ran faster than a galloping horse, and with the burst more terrible still. Though it spent true chi, the chi recovery art kept the drain from growing too great, and running a movement art is itself a kind of cultivation. So the distance cost me little. Before long I reached the range's outskirts, not daring the deep forest, where a fierce Yao beast or even a beast king would leave 10 lives too few. I had come only for two things, to test whether planting and raising were possible in the painting, and to gather materials for alchemy. The medicine hall of the Neon family kept its own masters for refining and alchemy. So long as you provided the materials and paid a labor fee, they would refine pills for you, provided you were a family disciple. The moment I entered the trees I smiled, because I had found another benefit of the painting. A cloud on it dissipated to reveal a forest, and a close look showed it was indeed the Bokryong range, though the map displayed only a circle about a mile across, with me at its center. Had it shown merely a map, there would have been nothing to marvel at, but the key was that the map carried several options that could be chosen and then displayed. They were medicinal herbs, wild beasts, Yao beasts, and humans, each lighting the map when picked. Herbs showed as green dots that, tapped, named themselves and gave a little information. Wild beasts showed as yellow dots, Yao beasts as red dots that showed their rank, and humans as white dots with a rougher reading than the beasts got. Seeing it, I nearly laughed aloud with excitement, feeling all the more that my mountains and rivers' martial soul was miraculous. The painting seemed to fold the whole world into itself, needing only that some event trigger it before it displayed. Excitement aside, I had not forgotten my errand, and with this display things would be convenient. My main targets were herbs and Yao beasts below rank 3. I checked one green dot, then leaped and dashed toward it. The plant it marked was called Heavenly Fragrance Grass, the chief ingredient for refining the vein protection pill. And its only trouble was that it grows on cliffs tens or even hundreds of yards high. Once I would not have dared even think of collecting it myself. Now it was nothing, since with the soaring cloud steps I could step the cliff face in a height of 100 or 200 yards was easy. Holding the Heavenly Fragrance Grass, I was exceptionally pleased, because its market price was not cheap, 10-1 for this one stalk, and refining a single vein protection pill wanted a full 20 stalks. There was a good stand of it nearby, so I simply went all out, pulling up every mature plant and dropping it to the ground. Then I entered the painting, not having forgotten my purpose. Heavenly Fragrance Grass keeps its full potency only for an hour after cutting. Though it can still be used longer, the efficacy drops badly, so if the painting could grow it fresh, that would be wonderful. The moment I stepped into the village, a voice in my mind welcomed the Dominator back to the mountain and river world. It told me this was the world of the mountains and rivers' martial soul, home to its resident folk, some skilled at planting, some at animal husbandry, some at alchemy. In short, there was nothing they could not do, only things I could not imagine, and as the world upgraded, I would receive more help. I looked for the speaker and found no one. It told me that the mountain and river world currently stood at rank 2, so that I could recruit only rank 2 farmers and rank 2 herdsmen. After this upgrade to rank 2, a shop had appeared where the Dominator could buy what he needed: weapons, pills, treasures, tools, and so on. All goods, it said, were divided into 5 grades. mortal, fine, rare, immortal, and divine, their effects differing by grade. And since the world was now ranked 2 and the shop was open, the first opening gifted a lucky draw. It explained that as a martial artist's rank rose, the martial soul grew stronger, and the world's rank rose with it, ordinarily in step. At my second level cultivation, the world was ranked 2. The higher the world's rank, the more goods and the finer their grade, and the more powerful the folk I could recruit. One day I might call up top-tier existences from every walk: martial gods, alchemy gods, gods of craftsmen. Stunned by the run of prompts, I only came to myself after a while and hurried to open the shop. There were 12 items in it, refreshing every 2 hours, currently mostly farm tools. There was a mortal-grade hoe that weeded a 10th faster and lasted a 10th longer, and a fine-grade sickle that doubled the harvest, doubled its own lifespan, and halved the labor. They were things plainly meant for the folk inside to use, so that handed to the farmers they would work twice as fast for half the effort. But it did not end there. The voice told me that this was the Dominator's first use of the recruiting function, that I could recruit rank 2 farmers and herdsmen and buy mortal-grade goods. The first recruiting cost nothing but was limited to 2, and it asked me to choose. 2 cards appeared in the painting, a farmer and a herdsman drawn in a soft landscape style, very beautiful, and each showed the effects it would bring. A rank 2 farmer raised the efficiency and quality of crops each by a 10th, and a rank 2 herdsman did the same for livestock. So whether I planted herbs or raised animals, both yield and quality would climb. I gladly chose 1 rank 2 farmer card and 1 rank 2 herdsman card, meaning to plant a few herbs and raise a few beasts to learn the function first. I would invest more later if it proved truly useful. The 2 of them greeted me as Dominator and asked me to assign them tasks, and after I chose, a puff of white smoke rose, and soon 2 figures stood before me. One was dressed as a farmer, about 30, the other as a herdsman, also about 30. But the farmer was a man, and the herdsman was not, being instead one of the bull demon folk I had glimpsed in the painting before, bull-headed and human-bodied. Whether the farmer or the bull demon, I could understand their speech, though I did not know whether anyone else could. I sent the bull demon herdsman off to rest first, since I had caught no Yao beast cubs yet. Then I handed the collected heavenly fragrance grass to the human farmer and told him to plant it, and above all, not to damage it, that it was precious. He answered that he understood, and set to work, and though I first watched, worried, after a moment I was wholly relieved. A professional is a professional. Had I planted the grass myself, I doubt half would have lived. Yet the rank 2 farmer planted it all and fast. I looked forward to the future more and more. At this rate, I might one day recruit alchemists inside the painting, and never again have to court another man's mood to have my medicine refined. I might even forge weapons and tools within it. I was in no hurry to leave, having things to understand carefully. Recruiting folk or buying goods inside the painting cost mountain and river coins, which could be exchanged from real-world money. If I earned 101, I could keep it or trade it in, at a ratio of roughly 10:1 to a single coin. Recruiting 1 rank 2 farmer or herdsman took 10 coins, 101. Truly not cheap. But the returns were plain enough that I never felt cheated, and the low rank was only the low rank of today. As my cultivation and the world both climbed, the folk I could recruit would grow more numerous and stronger, the work more efficient still. It handed me one more reason to get strong. Then I remembered that opening the shop for the first time had gifted a lucky draw, and I hoped I might draw a pill, the thing I needed most. I turned to the wheel, the most common sort of great spinning wheel, crowded with all kinds of items, farm tools and weapons and techniques and pills, even blind mystery rewards. Then I set it turning. I set the wheel turning, and it immediately spun up at speed. What I wanted most was a pill. Honestly, though, anything interesting and useful would have pleased me too, and there were plenty of things on the wheel to want. There was even an intermediate cultivation technique called the 100-step flying sword technique, an art the Neung Library did not so much as own, which made it exceedingly rare. By its description, once mastered, a man could take a head from hundreds of yards away, which felt more fearsome than a bow. A bow cannot be steered, its arrow gone the instant it is loosed, while the 100-step flying sword could be controlled. Even after the sword flew out, a man who had cultivated a protective aura could bend its speed and its path in the air. That was awesome. As the wheel spun, I could not help wishing for the 100-step flying sword and for a pill, the 2 things I most wanted, hoping to draw one of them cleanly. The arrow landed on the 100-step flying sword technique, and I jumped up in excitement because although the art could not raise my cultivation, the lift it gave my combat power was simply too great. Imagine it, taking a man's life with a flying sword before he had even drawn near. A thing without equal. The voice congratulated the Mountains and Rivers Dominator on drawing the intermediate cultivation technique, the 100-step flying sword technique. Because this was my first use of the lucky draw, it said, I was rewarded with 1 flying sword. That was an unexpected surprise, and I looked at the blade's description. The Cheongpung sword, it read, a high-quality flying sword, usable only to perform flying sword arts, lending 20% to flight speed and 20% to technique power. A note followed. Goods obtained from the mountain and river world, it said, work their special effects only for the Mountains and Rivers Dominator, so that gifted to another the effects vanish. And moreover, after such an item is stolen, the Dominator may draw an identical one from the world again, without limit. I understood the note well enough. Even if this sword were snatched away, it would be nothing but a common steel blade in another's hand, without the bonus to speed or power, which was not bad at all. A treasure can be a crime, and I currently had no way to guard the good things that were mine, so it was entirely possible this Cheongpung sword might be taken. Let them take it then. It would only be an ordinary steel sword, nothing to ache over, and the painting would simply compensate me again, so there was no need to worry at all. The one drawback was that the Cheongpung sword suited flying sword arts alone, like the 100-step flying sword technique, so its use was rather narrow, and yet even so it was already enough. I am not a greedy man, and with these two together my combat power had risen by a great deal. If I met Nguyen Chung now, I would not even need to lift a hand, since the moment the flying sword appeared he would die on the spot. Having gotten the 100-step flying sword technique, I set my other work aside for the moment, came out of the painting, and found a quiet place to cultivate the art. Unlike other techniques, though the 100-step flying sword took 9 levels to great perfection, it held only one move, the flying sword itself, which is all one can ask of an intermediate art. With the martial soul studying and demonstrating beside me, cultivating a single move technique was truly too easy, and in 2 days I carried it to the 9-level great perfection. The plainest feeling was that the higher its level, the faster the sword and the greater its power. At the 9th level, a single throw should have no trouble killing a 3rd-level peak martial artist, unless the man had cultivated some powerful defensive art. A sharp screech came from the sky, and I looked up at a level 2 peak Yao beast, a black eagle, that had circled my head for 2 days now, seeming to hunt a chance to kill me. With it there I had cultivated poorly, forced to change places several times, nearly slipping into chi deviation. Today the beast had come again, the perfect chance to test the power of the 100-step flying sword. I stood, gripped the Cheongpung sword, ran my true chi, and worked the 100-step flying sword technique. The Cheongpung sword turned into an afterimage and broke through the air with a sharp whistle, closing on the circling eagle at terrible speed. Unlike a bow, the flying sword needs no aim, since once the target is locked it will hit unless the enemy blocks or dodges. The sword was too fast, and by the time the eagle saw it, it was too late to dodge, and a white light pierced its body and blood scattered. I had missed the vital point though, since it was my first time and I was still a little rusty, so that although the sword pierced the eagle, it missed the killing spot. A beast of that rank, a level 2 peak equal to a 2nd level peak man, would not die of a wound that was not vital. Furious, the eagle folded and dove, plainly meaning to fight me to the death. But a beast's brain is not a man's, and it did not know that the 100-step flying sword goes out and returns. Shoot it out, retract it, that is one attack. So as the eagle accelerated its dive, the Cheongpung sword had already turned back, and this time it drove straight through the eagle's head. I had not steered it, since before mastering a protective aura, internal energy cannot be released outward. It was only that the eagle had moved into place itself, so that the returning sword happened to pierce its head along its original path. Pure luck, I thought, letting out a breath, since cultivation is one thing and real combat another. Over the 2 days of drilling I had used only stones and trees, fixed targets easy to hit. Clearly I would need to loose it at more Yao beasts before I could truly master it. There was a good deal of valuable material on the Black Eagle, worth at least 1,001 at market for a level 2 peak beast, its blood and bone all usable in alchemy. So I threw the corpse into the painting, took up the Cheongpung sword and used the soaring cloud steps to search the range. What I wanted were Yao beast cubs, though hunting a few beasts below rank 3 along the way for coin was fine too. Selling technique manuals was too eye-catching. Basic and low ones tolerable, but an intermediate one impossible to sell unnoticed. When I killed the eagle I had wondered whether it left young behind, so I searched the places it often circled, and sure enough I found a nest on a cliff with 4 chicks in it. Without a word I put them into the painting and handed them to the rank 2 herdsman to raise. A black eagle carries alchemy material on its body, and grown these would be level 2 peak beasts without a day of cultivation. Helpers of my own at a hard moment. After the chicks I did not stop searching, since 1 herb and 1 beast were plainly not enough. The map named a starflower, a material for the breakthrough pill, and a twin-winged snake, whose gallbladder is an important material for the heart protection pill. Adults at the level 1 peak, and highly poisonous. There was a chi-transforming fruit too, a main material for the breakthrough pill, and an adamant wolf, whose bones make adamant pills, adults at rank 3. As I gathered, I also began to cultivate 2 intermediate movement arts at once, and after 3 days both reached great perfection. So I directly unlocked the second step of the soaring cloud steps, and went on drilling. At the second step, its speed already far outran men of my level, and even a 3rd level peak man could not match it. With the explosive chi art, I could easily flee even a 4th level martial artist. The 100-step flying sword, used constantly on the beasts, I brought nearly to perfection over those 3 days, controlling it with ease, my target locking far surer. Were I to meet that black eagle again, I would never fail to hit the vital point but kill it in a single throw. And because cultivating footwork and the flying sword still ran the red sun cultivation technique through my body each time, that art advanced fast, reaching the 9th layer near its great perfection. Beyond the gains in strength there were others. Aside from the beasts I killed, worth 20 or 30,000 won, my painting now held 10 kinds of herb and 3 Yao beast cubs. Had the farmers and herdsmen not been so few and unable to handle more, I would gladly have stayed several days longer. But it was time to head back, the materials mostly gathered, to refine them into pills, since raising my strength to the 3rd level was the key thing with the competition. Only days off. My one regret was that I had not glimpsed a level 3 peak beast in all those days, though there was no help for it. I dared not push alone into the depths of the range, too dangerous, and a life thrown away is not worth it. Just as I prepared to leave, a great red dot appeared on the map, and a howl rolled through me until my chi and blood surged. When I tapped it, the map named a level 4 Yao beast, a howling moon wolf, and I was startled. Better run, I thought, since I could handle a level 3 peak man. Just as I meant to go, a group of youths cut me off, a dozen or 13 of them, all with decent strength, the best a match for Nuing Ilseol at the 3rd level peak. One of them snarled at me to get lost, saying they had lured this howling moonwolf out of the mountains. I frowned and told him I had never meant to fight him for that piece of junk, and asked whether he could speak like a person. A calmer voice cut in. A youth who named himself Lee Sung-un apologized for his junior brother's rudeness, and asked how he might address me. His attitude was not bad, and I placed him at once as the young genius of the Lee family, one of the city's 4 great families. I gave my name and told him not to mind it, that I was leaving anyway. I had been a little annoyed, but since he was polite, I did not hold it against him. He smiled and said that since fate had crossed our paths, and the howling moon wolf was fearsome, I might as well join them against it and take a share of the spoils. I waved him off and told him I was a coward who feared death, then turned and left without hesitation. Behind me, one of his people spat the word coward, and another sniffed that he had never even heard the name Naeong So. I was probably just an ordinary disciple, not worth senior brother Song-gun wasting words on. It would be different, he said, if a Nuong Pung or a Nuong Chil-su or a Nuong Il-seol were here to help. Lee Sung-un told them to be quiet, that the wolf was here to set the traps and ready the attack. Though he was plainly only 15 or 16, he already carried the bearing of an expert. When I had gone 200 or 300 yards, I stopped, since I was quite curious how one of the 4 great families of the city would handle a howling moonwolf. It was a level 4 beast equal to a 4th level man, and already able to loose a protective aura. The Lee disciples set their traps and left Lee Sung-un as bait, the rest hidden to strike together once the wolf entered, but they had clearly underestimated it. When it charged, it opened its mouth and howled, and blade-like protective aura flew out and shoveled up the ground, wrecking every trap they had set. Lee Sung-gun called the retreat, saying the thing was too strong and too cunning and they were no match. He had only wanted to test himself against a level 4 beast at his 3rd level peak, and had not expected it to be this strong, wholly beyond him. Only his strength let him block a few hits, where anyone else would have been killed at once by the aura blades. The words were barely out when someone was cut in half at the waist. A 2nd level peak man hidden behind a great tree that was felled, and took him with it. The Lee disciples panicked and scattered, some tripping over roots. This is the terror of a level 4 Yao beast, I thought, hidden in the shadows, not meaning to mock them. Facing a beast of that rank, I would have had to run just the same, and would have looked just as ragged. At the critical moment, Lee Sung-un called for everyone not to panic, that he would block it and they should retreat quickly. He was quite a man, not turning to run but shaking his long sword at the wolf, deflecting with his blade the aura blades that had just struck him. It also let him see the gap between himself and a level 4 beast, that winning was impossible, though perhaps he could hold a while. I was quite impressed with him, since a man like this was far more capable than a Naeong Bi, a Naeong Chung, or a Naeong Pung. Perhaps only Naeong Il-seol could be named in the same breath. He roared the name of the Gale Sword, kicked off the ground, and flew out, his long sword aimed at the wolf's throat. A throat is the weakest point on any beast, and he clearly knew it. That should be an advanced sword art, I thought. and worthy of a Lee genius to have obtained one, a key figure being cultivated. The Lee disciples, panicking a moment ago, now stopped to shout for senior brother Shungin to go for it, to kill that monster. I was speechless, since Lee Sung-un was strong but could only slow the wolf and buy their escape. These pig-headed fools who would not run at such a time were enough to anger a man to death. His sword pierced the wolf's body, but only about half an inch before it could go no deeper. The terrible defense of a level 4 beast and the hardness of its bone were fully a match for his steel. The wolf felt the pain, howled, and fired another aura blade from its mouth, and Lee Sung-un hurriedly withdrew to block but was still struck once. Though he had plainly cultivated a defensive art and was not gravely hurt, the wound was still terrible. With the force of the aura blade, he could not steady himself, was flung back, and crashed into a tree. Such an injury might be little to a third-level peak man in other times, but in a fight between experts life and death part by a hair. Being already the wolf's inferior and now knocked down, how would the wolf let the chance pass? And it leaped and pounced on him. The Lee disciples cried out for their senior, some covering their eyes. Just as he was about to die a miserable death under the wolf's bloody maw, a sword light flashed in, threaded past the obstacles, and struck the wolf. It let out a hysterical, piercing scream that sent several Lee disciples foaming at the mouth and fainting on the spot, the very brush around them rustling as if trembling from the howl. The disciples looked over in surprise and found the sword light already gone and the wound on the wolf's brow noticeably deeper. The strike had landed on the exact wound Lee Sung-un had left there before. The sword had flashed in and out in an instant, and when the wolf tried to find its attacker, there was no one there at all. Lee Sung-un seized the moment to escape, a smart man who knew someone was helping him, and that whoever it was, he had to save his own life first. But the wolf would not let him off easily, and having failed to find its attacker, it turned all its hatred on the Lee disciples in a frenzied pursuit. Screams rang out one after another, 2 of them dead in a breath, and Lee Sung-un, though he wanted to stop it, was powerless, already dizzy from the loss of blood. It looked as though the Lee disciples present would all be slaughtered. Then the sword light appeared again, and again struck the same wound. However strong the wolf was, it was still only a level 4 beast, and my 100-step flying sword sat at the knife layer great perfection. With the power of the Cheongpung sword and the multiplying boost of the explosive chi art, I had stabbed the same already opened wound twice, so that hard bone or not, it was pierced through. Of course, to think that alone would kill the wolf was still wishful thinking, but the wolf was in the open and I was in the dark. I loosed the 100-step flying sword again and again, changing my place after each strike, so that when the wolf arrived where I had been, it could only howl at the sky in fury. By the time the wolf fixed on me, the Lee disciples had begun to pull back, having truly seen its terror, knowing that if they did not run now, they would have no chance later. They urged their senior to come away, that it did not matter who had helped, that they had kept their lives today, and he hummed his reluctant agreement, plainly loath to go. The wolf's aura had weakened sharply, and it looked about to die, and leaving now was a pity, the more so because the first wound had been his own. Then the wolf suddenly cried out and turned to flee into the deep jungle. I laughed that I would wear it to death, and a figure chased the way it had gone, since with the soaring cloud steps I was far faster than a wolf staggering on emptied blood. This howling moon wolf was a treasure worth 40 or 50,000 won, and I could not let half a day's work go to waste. After all, I had not saved Lee Sung-un to save him, but only seen a chance to kill the wolf. Someone recognized me, saying it was the Nyung disciple from before, that his name was Nyung So, that this guy's footwork was terrifying, that his flying sword just now must have been his. He wondered where I had got such an art, since he had never heard the Nyung family had such a sword technique. One of them spat that if not for me they would not have lost so many people. Another said that if senior brother Sung-un had not wounded the wolf first, could I have done it? Among the Lee disciples were several stronger than me who felt dissatisfied, 3 of them at the 3rd level besides Lee Sung-un at the peak. They scorned me, thinking I had taken advantage. One of them sneered that it was fine either way, that once I killed the wolf they would just pick up the spoils, and Lee Sung-un's face was cold, plainly of the same mind. Another said it did not count as picking up spoils, that they had lured the wolf out to kill it, and no one had asked me to interfere. Then a mournful cry came from hundreds of yards off, the final cry before death, and anyone could tell. They said it was dead, and that they should go take a look, and Lee Sung-un waved them on, everyone following, since with 3 dead they still had over 10, and would not fear me. Not far off, I wiped the sweat from my brow and sat cross-legged on the ground, using the chi recovery art to restore my true chi. To kill the wolf, I had used the explosive chi art again and again and spent a great deal, and now I was nearly dry. Worried the Lee disciples would come to make trouble, I did not rush to clear the scene but hurried to recover, and to be ready if they did. Besides the recovery art, I chewed a stalk of the herb they distill into chi recovery pills. Its effect far weaker than the pill, but better than nothing. Killing a level 4 Howling Moon Wolf at the second level peak could only be called good luck. Without the wound Lee Sung-eun's sword had opened, my strikes could never have breached the wolf's defense at all. Unwilling as I was to admit it, that was the reality, that the gap of a full realm is a thing even a powerful technique struggles to close. Raising my cultivation was an urgent matter. A moment later, the Lee disciples reached the scene, Lee Sung-eun at their head. He called me Brother Naeung and said, calm and composed, that they had discovered this howling moon wolf and been the ones to lure it out. Since I had helped kill it, they would naturally share some things with me as compensation. But at that moment, in my eyes, he had transformed from a dashing young lord into a heap of stinking filth. Shameless thing. The one who set the terms was a young man beside him named Lee Ray, a third-level fighter, stronger than me by looks though not by Lee Sung-eun's measure. Lee Sung-eun told Lee Rui not to speak so, saying he was sure Brother Nyung was a smart man. He was a hypocrite through and through, wanting the wolf's corpse yet insisting on the airs of a gentleman. Truly disgusting. I said nothing, only looking at them indifferently, since among them the only one I was somewhat wary of was Lee Sung-eun. He was wounded now, less than half his usual strength, so I was not afraid. The others nothing in my eyes. Seeing me silent, he asked again what compensation I needed, saying that so long as it was within reason, they could give it. I spoke this time, since I still needed time to recover and could stall a little, and the other side did not seem to know what I was doing. Among men below the third level, almost none cultivate the chi recovery art, and even those who do get little from it. I was an exception though, the martial soul strengthening every art it touched, currently at rank 1 with its 10th part enhancement. I asked Brother Lee how he thought we should divide it. He rubbed his chin and offered that there were 13 of them there counting me, and that by head count I would not even get a 10th. But since Brother Nguyen had made a contribution, they would take a small loss and give me a 10th and split the remaining 9 parts, and he asked how that was. Lee Rui begrudged even that, complaining it was far too generous, that they had lost 3 brothers and must compensate their families. And the others echoed him, asking on what basis I should get a 10th. I laughed then, truly amused, and told them that I had seen shameless people but never anyone this shameless, since I had thought Lee Sung-eun shameless enough, and here were men more shameless still. Lee Rui sneered that if I did not want it then forget it. Offering me a share had been a kindness. He asked what I could do if they gave me nothing, his face full of mockery. They had numbers and several were plainly stronger, and the 4 great families were always fighting anyway, so what if they gave me nothing? I told him it was so, that I had meant to give them something since they had lost men, but that now they would not get a single hair, and it was the truth, since I am not an unreasonable man, but when the other side is so shameless I can be heartless too, and treat a man as he treats me. Since you are ungrateful and shameless, I thought, do not blame me, Nung So, for being heartless. Lee Rui roared that I was truly courting death, his long sword flickering as he thrust it straight for my throat, to kill me and silence me. A killing in that forest no one would trace, and besides, they had never even heard my name, which meant a nameless Naeung disciple, safe to kill with no one to come asking. Lee Sung-eun did not stop him, being injured and unable to act himself. Though Lee Rui, if slightly weaker than he, was plainly stronger than me, so winning should be no trouble. Lee Rui cried the name of the Gale Sword, the same advanced art as his seniors, though far weaker in aura and power. One disciple said that senior brother Song-gun's equal, that brat surely could not block it. Who told him not to know what was good for him, that he deserved to die? The Lee disciples wearing looks of gloating, with no thought of gratitude at all. Is this what the fighting between families is like? I thought, cruel enough, but they had picked the wrong target today. Facing the attack, I sneered that truly the ignorant are fearless, since I came from a beggar's life and understood young that there is no mercy in this world. If a man wants you dead, you must kill him to live, and I had seen it many times. Lee Rui's blade arrived, but I had vanished, and the rock I had sat on cross-legged was pierced through by the Gale Sword, fragments flying, and had it been a man, he would surely have died. The Lee disciples cried out to ask what footwork this was, how it was so fast. Lee Sung-eun among them, dumbstruck. A moment ago I sat there and the next I was gone, only an after-image flashing by before Lee Rui's target disappeared. I appeared behind Lee Rui with no thought of the flying sword, since the range was too close, and up close the 100-step flying sword lacks the domineering power of the falling star fist. Someone shouted for senior brother Lee Rui to be careful. Lee Rui, feeling someone behind him, hurriedly turned and slashed to force me off. But how could I give him the chance now? I told him I had not yet used the 9th form of the Falling Star Fist, and that I would let him be the first to test its power. Falling Star Fist, 9th form, Falling Star Descent. I did not hold back, hating this ungrateful man who would kill at the slightest disagreement. So this was a killing strike, and I used not only the fist's strongest form, but the explosive chi art besides. Lee Seong-gun felt the power of the punch and hurried to intervene, crying for mercy. Li Rui felt it more intensely still, since he saw a falling star crashing toward his body, its terrible aura forcing him to where he could not breathe or move. He could not understand how a man of lower cultivation loomed so vastly larger. Of course he could not, since with the martial soul's enhancement, the ninth form under the explosive chi art had long passed the power of a third-level peak man's punch. The fist landed solidly on Li Rui, his bones shattering with a crack, and he was flung into a nearby tree, his head lolling, no longer breathing. His death was not pretty, his body almost deformed by the blow, nearly every bone in it broken, and traces of flame burns on his skin, the special effect of the red sun cultivation technique. The Li disciples cried out his name, that I had actually killed him, that they would fight me to the death. Li Sungin shouted for them all to stop, filled with resentment, wanting to avenge Li Rui. Yet he knew well that no one present could match a man who had killed Li Rui with a single punch, unless he himself were not injured, and his injuries were not light. So acting rashly would end no better for him than for Li Rui. The other Li disciples, jolted awake by his shout, understood my terrible strength, that it was surely far past the second-level peak. They asked whether they were just going to let the brat leave, whether Li Rui had died in vain, still troubled by his death, still thinking their numbers could bully me. I sneered and asked who among them could stop me if I Neung So wanted to leave, hoisting the wolf's corpse onto my shoulder and swaggering straight through their crowd. No one dared move. The sight of me killing a third-level fighter with one punch still fresh, all of them clear that whoever moved first would die. Past the crowd I secretly let out a breath, since to tell the truth my true chi had not fully recovered. After going all out to kill Li Rui, had they truly swarmed me I would have had to run, only I had not expected them so cowardly they would not even dare to attack, which helped me a great deal. Acting tough and walking off is a damn exhilarating thing. They murmured about my background, that by my aptitude I was no worse than that genius Naeung Elseol. More than that, even a Naeung Bibiom could not have left like that at the second-level peak. Li Sungun's face was gloomy as he watched me go. One of them asked, disbelieving, whether senior brother Singun truly meant Naeung Bibiom, one of the 4 young masters of the city, and Li Singun said it was him. Another protested that it was impossible, since Naeung Bibiom had already advanced to the 4th level 3 years ago at the age of 12. A true genius. And how could that brat compare? They told him he overrated me, that had he not been injured today, I would surely have died, and that goes without saying. Li Sunggun, though he admired me, was more confident that uninjured, Li Rui would not have died. Then he suddenly said coldly that they were not to go talking about today after they returned. They should just say a howling moonwolf had killed Li Rui, or they would all be in trouble. Li Rui's grandfather was a Li family elder, and if he learned his grandson was killed by a Noon and they had not helped, they knew the consequences. They said they understood. Out of the range I first went to market and traded all my surplus materials for silver, 35,001. I needed the money since even asking the Neong Medicine Hall to refine my pills carried a service fee. The more precious the pill, the higher the fee, though 35,001 was more than enough. Then I went to the auction house and collected the 101 my basic manuals had earned, still leaving 10-1 as a handling fee. All the silver I stored inside the painting, safer than a bank. Though I had heard of a thing called a storage ring, I had never seen one, and figured even if they existed they could not rival my painting. This time I meant to sell no more techniques, since with silver in hand such risky business could stop, to avoid any mishap. Leaving the auction house I quickened my pace back to the family, and went straight for the medicine hall, the place where the Neong family refined pills and treated injuries and illnesses. It was always crowded, so that dodging faces I did not want to see was truly hard. Sure enough, just as I arrived I saw Nung Wu and Nung Peng heading the same way. She's still the charming and graceful girl, holding his arm now, sweet enough to make one jealous. He was still in white, dashing, his aura seeming stronger than when I last saw him, standing there like a drawn sword. He spotted me as I spotted them, neither of us hiding, and called me a little beggar. He asked whether I had come to the medicine hall to beg for medicine dregs again, his words heavy with sarcasm. In the days when I had no money I would come here to beg medicine dregs, mainly to cultivate on, and had been mocked plenty for it.